You ask why you cannot hear God, and I tell you gently, you do not yet know the silence in which He speaks. For God does not shout, my beloved. He does not argue. He does not plead. He waits in the stillness you forgot, behind the veil of restless thought, behind the clamor of worry and wish, behind the walls of the self-made mind. Do you not see? He has been speaking to you from the first breath of your becoming, but the volume of your mind has drowned the sacred whisper of His presence. It is not that God is silent, it is that your awareness is loud with the noise of illusion. Every thought that rushes forward saying, I know, I must, I fear, I want, I don't. These are the voices of Maya dressing themselves in the garments of truth, but they are not truth. They are echoes in the canyon of forgetfulness. The mind is not evil, but it has been mistaken for the self, and in that mistaken identity, it has become a liar not out of malice, but because it cannot see beyond its own shadow. To hear God, you must know the silence deeper than thought. To hear God, you must stop listening to the self that never stops speaking. The agony of the unanswered prayer is not that God withheld a response, but that you did not descend deeply enough into the sanctuary of stillness to perceive it. When you prayed, your lips moved, your heart ached, but your inner ear remained tuned to the language of logic, of hope, of doubt, of time. But God speaks in the eternal now. He answers without words. He breathes through intuition, through peace, through the sudden lifting of fear from the chest without any reason but grace. What is this mind that keeps you from hearing the one who created you? It is like static on a radio, bussy, loud, erratic, while the sacred station of God hums just beneath it, waiting, never ceasing, ever loving. You do not need a better signal. You need a quieter receiver. The world has taught you to trust only what you can grasp with intellect. But the soul was not given to you for grasping, it was given to you for surrender. Breathe now, not just with the lungs, but with the awareness behind the lungs. Inhale not to gather air, but to remember that there is a presence moving through you that you did not create. Exhale not to expel, but to release the weight of noise, the burden of believing that your thoughts are yourself. Inhale, God is speaking. Exhale, I must become still to listen. Again inhale, the whisper of the infinite is near. Exhale, I empty myself of all else. Now let me show you what the mind is, and why it has become the veil between your soul and your source. Let us begin not by arguing with the noise, but by seeing it clearly for what it is: a mask, a mist, a dream. For what you believe is your thinking is often just the soul forgotten. Let us unveil the lie, not with force, but with light. Let us descend into the temple of stillness where God has never stopped speaking. Let us remember that silence is not absent seat, is the language of the eternal. And that, my child, is where we go now. It is a brave soul, indeed, who dares to silence the mind, not because silence is difficult, but because the mind has convinced you that it is dangerous to be without its constant commentary, its ceaseless chatter, its delusions of control, and its borrowed truths. It has made you believe that without it, you will be defenseless, unguided, alone. And yet, it is precisely the moment you begin to distrust the tyranny of thought that you begin to remember the wisdom that was placed in you before any thought was ever born, before language colored the world with its illusions, before identity hardened around circumstance and preference and fear. I tell you this plainly: the greatest act of courage on the spiritual path is not to climb a mountain, nor to renounce the world, nor to wear the robes of a mysticet. Is to stop believing the noise inside your own head and to begin trusting the quiet pull of the soul. Your mind mimics the voice of God, but it is not God. It pretends to be savior, judge, rescuer, and even prophet, but what it truly fears is not being right, but being irrelevant in the presence of spirit. It will wrap its fears in the garb of reason. It will take your traumas and sew them into arguments. It will take your wounds and call them instincts, and it will whisper, "Listen to me, or you will suffer." But who suffers more than the one who has never heard the peace beneath their own name? Who suffers more than the one who cannot distinguish their inner narrative from their eternal nature? The mind is not your enemy, but it must be dethroned from its false place as king. It was meant to serve the soul, not silence it. And yet, you have been taught from birth to bow before intellect, to seek answers through calculation and control, to diagnose your doubts with reason and your longings with explanation. But the soul does not speak in explanations. It speaks in light. It speaks in peace. It speaks in the sudden clarity that arises when you are not trying to make anything happen, when you are simply still enough to allow truth to rise without resistance, without shape, without effort. The voice of God is not loud because it is weak. It is quiet because it is real. It does not need to compete with the world's volume, nor to conquer your attention. It waits not impatiently, but eternally because it is the source of your being, and it knows that when you are finally tired of all other voices, you will come to rest in its embrace. And what is that embrace? It is not emotion. It is not thought. It is not a sensation you can cling to. It is the uncaused peace that requires no reason. It is the joy that arises before a single desire has formed. It is the knowing that needs no proof, and the presence that remains even when every idea of God has fallen away. That is the voice I want you to hear, not someday, not when you're worthy, not when you've mastered silence, but now, in this moment, behind your breath, beneath your striving, within the stillness that has never left you. So breathe, not as a technique, but as a sacrament. Inhale, I no longer believe the mind's story. Exhale, I listen now with the ears of the soul. Inhale, I open to God. Exhale, I release control. Now, let us take action not outwardly with ambition or effort, but inwardly with attention and surrender, for the path from noise to silence, from fear to faith, from confusion to communion is not paved with thoughts, but with stillness. And in that stillness, God awaits not in silence as absence, but in silence as the most intimate presence of all. Let us go there now. Let us walk not with the feet, but with the breath. Let us turn inward where the voice has never ceased. The mind is a wondrous servant but a deceptive master, and in most souls it has ceased to serve and has begun to impersonate the self, building a throne of habit and noise, sitting crowned in a kingdom of restlessness, pretending to be wise while endlessly recycling the debris of yesterday's emotions and tomorrow's illusions. The mind is not evil, but it is afraid, and its fear manifests as complexity, as urgency, as the ceaseless spinning of interpretations meant to protect what does not need protection, the soul, which needs no defense, only remembrance. The mind lies not because it wishes to deceive, but because it cannot perceive reality beyond its own limited framework. It was made for measurement, not for union, for calculation, not for communion. It speaks the language of form, but cannot touch the truth of formlessness. And so it offers you thoughts dressed as truth, opinions parading as insight, judgments cloaked in the garments of care. But beneath them all there is only one motive: survival. It wants to preserve its illusion of control, its illusion of identity, its illusion of being the center. The mind whispers, if I analyze more, I will be safe. It promises, if I think hard enough, I will find peace. It threatens, if I stop thinking, something terrible will happen. But let me ask you, has it ever delivered what it promised? Has it ever fulfilled the deep ache within you that longs not for another explanation, but for the soundless certainty that you are not alone, not broken, not bound to this cycle of inner noise? That ache is not something the mind can cure, for it was never born in the mind. It is the soul crying out for truth, for intimacy with the infinite, for a return to the stillness that existed before the first thought, before the first fear, before the first identity was fastened around your spirit like a cage made of your own voice. And so the mind becomes like a barking dog trying to explain the moon, loud, convinced, insistent, and yet completely incapable of knowing what it speaks about. You are not the barking. You are not the confusion. You are not the echo chamber of logic and anxiety and past conditioned fear. You are the witness who hears all of it and yet remains unchanged. You are the presence that watches without becoming. You are the silence behind the spinning wheel. And once you see this clearly, not as philosophy, but as direct experience, the liar loses his power, not by being defeated, but by being exposed to the light of truth. Now, breathe with Minot casually, but consciously, as if every breath were a remembering, a washing away of dust from the mirror of your true nature. Inhale, I release the illusion of thought. Exhale, I return to the presence of God. Inhale, I am not the story. Exhale, I am the stillness before the story began. If your mind is busy now, that is fine. Let it be. Do not fight it. Do not argue with it. Only see it. Only witness. Let it spin and you remain still. Let it shout and you remain quiet. For the truth is not found in opposing the noise, but in no longer identifying with it. The soul does not need to convince the mind, it only needs to be remembered. And in the light of that remembrance, the liar has no power. You do not have to silence the mind, you only have to stop believing everything it says. Let us now go deeper, not into the mechanics of the noise, but into the contrast between that noise and the voice that never fluctuates, the presence that never demands, the divinity that has always spoken, not in language, but in peace. Let me take you there. Let us descend not downward into density, but inward into clarity, for there you shall see the difference between that which demands your attention and that which calls you home. Now, beloved soul, let me show you how to recognize the difference between the voice of God and the voice of thought. For one leads you deeper into stillness, while the other leads you deeper into yourself as a concept, a conflict, a container of past impressions and future projections, ever spinning, ever searching, but never arriving. For thoughts are born of conditioning, of memory, of habit layered upon habit, and though they wear the garments of urgency and feel familiar in their insistence, they do not contain the fragrance of eternity, nor the tenderness of divine authority, nor the quiet ecstasy of truth. Thoughts are loud because they are afraid, repetitive because they are uncertain, persuasive because they are unsure of their own root. But the voice of spirit, when it speaks, is not afraid to be brief, not anxious to be accepted, not desperate to be heard, for it knows it speaks from beyond time, beyond self, beyond the trembling boundaries of logic. The mind's voice may come clothed in 1,000 faces, fear masked as reason, anger masked as righteousness, doubt disguised as discernment, but the voice of God does not disguise itself, for it needs no justification, no explanation, no cleverness. It arrives not with arguments, but with clarity, not with noise, but with resonance. It is not loud, but it is unmistakable. You do not analyze it, you recognize it. It does not explain itself because it is self-evident. And though it may be gentle, it leaves a vibration so luminous within the heart that no logic can compete with its still flame. You may wonder, but how do I know which voice is which? I say to you, test the voice not by its content but by its vibration. If it brings contraction, urgency, fear of missing out, anxiety about performance, or attachment to outcomes, it is the mind pretending to be God. But if it brings peace, clarity, detachment, and an inward warmth of truth that needs no proof, it is the divine whisper calling you back into alignment. The voice of God does not demand. It invites. It does not frighten. It stills. It does not flatter. It illumines. It is not reactive. It is real. Let me offer you a simple metaphor. Imagine your consciousness as a radio receiver. The world broadcasts thousands of frequencies: news, opinion, worry, hope, noise, and your mind, like a radio dial, can be tuned to any one of them. Most people live tuned to static, wondering why they cannot hear music. But the divine is always broadcasting on a higher wavelength, not louder, but subtler, not more intense, but more refined. And to tune in, you do not need to search for a signal, you need only remove the interference. You need only become quiet enough to notice that the song was always playing, just beneath the static of striving. So, I give you now a living practice. Sit, place your right hand over your heart, close your eyes, let the breath become gentle. And within that breath, mentally ask not with force, not with need, but with devotion. Was that God, or was that mind? Ask this. Whenever you feel confused, whenever guidance seems distant, whenever a voice speaks within you, and you are unsure of its origin, do not rush the answer. Do not interpret too quickly. Just ask, and then become very still. Stillness is the proving ground of spiritual truth. The false voice will grow restless in the silence. The true voice will rise like incense in the temple of the heart. Inhale, I tune my heart to God. Exhale, I release all voices that are not His. Inhale, I rest in truth. Exhale, I return to peace. Let the breath become your bridge, the question your opening, the silence your sanctuary. And now, beloved, let us go beyond recognition and into the sacred threshold, the place where the inner noise dissolves completely, and what remains is not a voice, not a word, but the very presence of God clothed in the stillness that has always lived within you. There, we shall listen not with ears, but with the soul. And in that divine quiet, the greatest truth is revealed not through thought, but through remembrance. Let us go there. Let us be still. Let us hear. And now, my beloved, let us pass through the final veil, not by climbing, not by solving, not by doing, but by entering into the stillness that forever surrounds and saturates the presence of God. For just as a lake must become perfectly still to reflect the stars above, so must your consciousness become unmoving if you would reflect the divine face within you. And that stillness is not merely the absence of motion, nor the dullness of inactivity, nor the forced suppression of thought. It is the divine condition, the original vibration, the sacred womb in which the voice of spirit is born, not as a word, but as the unmistakable knowing that you and the infinite were never two. All true communion begins in silence, not because God refuses to speak, but because he never stops speaking. Only you stop listening. And so when the morning comes, and the body wakes, and the noise of the world begins to surge toward your awareness, like a flood of expectation, anxiety, responsibility, and remembered personality, you must claim a space before it all, a sanctuary at the doorstep of consciousness, where you sit, spine tall, gaze lifted to the point between the eyebrows, breath quiet and unforced. And within that space, before words arise, before tasks rush in, before memory stains the mirror, you silently offer the most ancient prayer: reveal thyself. Do not demand, do not plead, do not analyze what happens. Simply offer that sacred whisper: reveal thyself, and then become the echo, become the chamber, become the quiet in which that invocation may be answered, not through thunder, nor sensation, nor a voice from the clouds, but through a holy expansion, a spreading inward calm, a golden pressureless presence that fills the body without entering it, a soundless certainty that says, I am. And it will not say more, for it does not need to. Truth does not explain. It simply is. You may not hear words, you may not see visions, but you will know, with the same inner knowing by which you know that you exist, that something real has entered the temple of your being, not as visitor, but as reminder of what was always there, waiting to be recognized again. That is the voice you seek. It is not a voice of grammar, but of gravity, not a voice of reasoning, but of resonance, not a voice that teaches with ideas, but one that illumines with presence. Now breathe with me. Inhale slowly, gently, as if the breath were an invisible prayer. Hold it not with strain, but with reverence, as though holding a sacred object in your cupped palms. Exhale without haste, as if the exhalation were carrying away everything false, everything that ever kept you from remembering who you are. Again, inhale, I open the temple. Hold, I wait for thee. Exhale, reveal thyself. This practice, when done daily, when done before the world awakens, when done with devotion and not demand, with stillness and not striving, will cleanse your inner instrument until it becomes transparent like crystal, and through it, the light of God shall pass, not as a doctrine, but as a direct experience, not as belief, but as being. And then you will hear not through ears, but through essence, see not a sentence, but a silence that transforms all confusion into clarity, all fear into faith, all separation into reunion. The voice of God is not rare, it is simply subtle. And the soul who learns to hear that subtlety becomes wise, becomes free, becomes the child who no longer needs to ask, because he is already in his Father's arms. Come with me now. Let us learn not only how to still the mind, but how to trust what waits in that stillness, how to dwell in it not as an exercise, but as a homecoming, for the door is always open, and the voice has never stopped speaking. It is time now not to find it, but to fall silent enough that it finds you. Beloved, now that you have glimpsed the quiet sanctuary through which the divine whispers, let us enter more deeply into the sacred practice of trust. Not the trust that relies upon outer signs or confirmations, not the trust that trembles in the face of silence, but the invincible trust that springs from knowing that God has never been outside of you, that he has always been present, even when your thoughts doubted, even when your emotions stormed, even when your prayers felt unanswered and the corridors of your being echoed with loneliness, for in those very moments, he was there, not in the language of sound, but in the vibration of your longing, not in the noise of answers, but in the stillness of presence, not as a sensation, but as the one who observes sensation itself. To trust your inner guidance is not to believe everything you think or feel, it is to discern the golden thread of peace that quietly persists underneath the changing moods of the mind and the tides of emotion. That soft undercurrent of knowing that does not insist, does not rush, does not explain, but simply is. A silent companion that says, "This way, beloved," not with urgency, but with gentle clarity, not with fear, but with calm light. This is the voice you once knew as a child before the world taught you to ignore it. This is the voice that has never misled you. Though you may have misinterpreted it, doubted it, discarded it for louder advice, yet still it returns, not offended, not diminished, but always ready to guide you from the inside out. Remember this: when God speaks through intuition, he does not shout, he shines. He does not argue, he is. His voice often appears as a holy hunch, a radiant peace, an unexpected stillness in the middle of your doubt, a wordless certainty that this now, is right, not right according to logic or strategy or reward, but right according to soul, according to light, according to the divine music written into your spine before time began. Sometimes you feel this peace for no reason at all, in the middle of washing dishes, or walking beneath the trees, or waking from sleep, and that, beloved, is God speaking. Do not dismiss these moments as accidents. These are the brushstrokes of spirit upon the canvas of your life. Now breathe with me, gently, slowly. Inhale, even now God is here. Exhale, I let go of needing proof. Inhale, I trust the silence. Exhale, I walk with the unseen. This breath, when taken in surrender, becomes your anchor in uncertainty, your gateway to guidance, your daily practice of faith, not blind faith, but luminous faith that sees without seeing, that hears without sound, that walks without map, because it walks with the one who holds all maps within his omnipresence. Begin this trust not with grand declarations, but with sacred remembering. Reflect, even now, on a moment from your life when a deep peace came for no reason, when you were about to choose wrongly and something stopped you, when you were lost and a quiet voice nudged you in a direction you could not explain. Was that your logic? Was that your habit? Or was it the holy friend who walks with you always, whispering through the silence? The more you remember these moments, the more they will return, not because God becomes more generous, but because you become more receptive, more attuned to the divine current that was always flowing beneath the static of thought. You need not force this trust. You only need to choose it again and again and again. And when doubt arises, as it will, do not argue with it. Simply breathe, become still, and return to the place where you last heard the divine, and not in noise, not in striving, but in that vast, luminous hush where the soul speaks and the mind bows. Let us now walk forward together, anchored in this trust, not to escape the world, but to walk through it as listeners of eternity, hearers of the infinite, children of the light who remember the voice that speaks in silence. And now, we shall go even deeper to unveil the subtle ways the ego clouds this inner hearing, and how, through stillness, we reclaim what was never truly lost. Ah, my beloved soul, now let us peer gently into the veil the ego wraps around your hearing. For if you would truly commune with God, you must come to know the one who interrupts him, not a demon, not an enemy, but a subtle shadow masquerading as your protector, your voice, yourself, yet whose only real power is suggestion, whose only real weapon is doubt, and whose only real mission is to keep you small, separate, frightened, and endlessly busy chasing what was already within you. For the ego is not some monstrous entity with claws and teeth. It is the whisper of falsehood that says, God is far, when in truth, God is nearer than breath. It is the inner commentator that says, this can't be real, when what you just felt in your spine was a pulse of the infinite. It is the mental projection that insists that unless the heavens split open and angels descend, It was probably just your imagination, and so you mistrust the very voice that is saving you, and believe instead the one that has confused you since birth. You must learn to recognize this voice and not to fear it, nor to fight it, but to unmask it with compassion, to watch it without attachment, to name its doubts as mere habits of thought, conditioned echoes, not sacred truth, for the ego always demands drama, certainty, proof, sensation, and grandiosity. While the voice of God arrives like the hush between thoughts, like the warmth in your chest that needs no words, like the peace that quietly survives your despair. Here is the divine paradox. The quieter it is, the more real it becomes. The softer the presence, the deeper its power. The less dramatic the message, the more holy its source. The ego will say, "You're just making this up." The soul replies, "Then why does peace remain?" The ego demands thunder and visions. The soul smiles and listens to the whisper that says, "I am." The ego seeks control, analysis, and certainty. The soul sinks into stillness and trusts the inner resonance that says, "This way, beloved." You must learn to distinguish these frequencies, not by memorizing rules, but by watching your own reactions when peace expands, when fear dissolves, when something within you exhales without reason, that is the fingerprint of God, and when agitation, pride, or anxiety push you into action, even when clothed in spiritual language, that is the shadow playing dress up. Now breathe with me. Inhale gently. I am not the doubt. Hold. I am not the noise. Exhale. I am the soul who hears. Again. Inhale. God is near. Exhale. And I am ready. Let these breaths become your inner sword of clarity, the light that cuts through the fog of self-judgment, the balm that heals the wound of chronic disbelief. Do not seek confidence in the ego's way. Do not wait for proof like the mind demands. True confidence is not the loudness of your conviction, but the quietness of your remembrance. It is not the absence of all questioning, but the unwavering return to the one who answers before the question is even formed. It is not feeling superior, but feeling surrendered, not above, but aligned. And should doubt return, and it will, for the ego never gives up, quickly welcome it like a teacher, not a tyrant, and let it remind you to turn inward once more, to still the breath, to lift the gaze, to say with calmness and joy, "I trust stillness. I release the noise. I recognize God's voice through peace." Say it now. Say it not with hope, but with knowing. For this affirmation does not create reality, it remembers it. From this remembrance, we move now into the still center of the self, the sacred chamber beyond all voices, where the soul no longer listens as one who seeks, but hears as one who is. Come now. Let us go there together. Now, dearest soul, let us walk hand in hand into the sanctuary behind all sensation, all story, all motion, the still place, where the true hearing of God becomes not a rare visitation, not a fleeting miracle, but your natural awareness. For if you would listen to God not once, not occasionally, but constantly, then you must no longer remain at the surface of yourself, bobbing with every thought, pulled by every emotion, distracted by every wave. You must sink, not into unconsciousness, but into that calm, ever-wakeful depth from which the waves arise, the depth that watches, that waits, that never moves. For that depth is not a place, it is your very self, and it has always been the witness. To anchor in the witness is not to escape life, but to reclaim your center from the storm, to know, as thoughts pass like clouds, that you are not the cloud but the sky. To feel emotion surge and still remain unmoved. To observe pleasure and pain and not call either one me. To behold fear arise like smoke and simply say, "Ah, there you are again," and in that saying, dissolve its power. For the witness does not judge, does not grasp, does not resist it, simply sees, and in that seeing becomes free. And in that freedom, hears the eternal whisper of spirit, undistorted, unfiltered, unmistakably clear. You have glimpsed this witness already many times, when suddenly you noticed yourself worrying and thought, "Why am I doing this?" And for that moment, you were not the worry, but the awareness of it. When you watched yourself overreact and felt a quiet knowing beneath it, saying, "This is not who you are," that was the witness speaking. When you are lost in grief and a still presence watched the waves roll through, gently but unshaken, that was the soul's eye looking out from eternity. And I tell you, this witness is not a faculty, not a practice, not a technique. It is your eternal identity. The light that never flickers, the listener behind the listening, the hearer of God's voice before sound was ever born. So let us now bring the body into alignment with this awareness, not as a machine, but as a temple. Sit upright, not stiff, but uplifted in dignity, as if you were a mountain remembering its height. Draw the breath slowly through the nose and feel it travel up the spine, not forced, not imagined, but invited, welcomed, followed. And now, lift your gaze, not your eyes themselves, but your attention gently to the point between the eyebrows, the Christ center, the spiritual eye, the seat of divine perception, and rest there without strain, without demand, without thought, simply watching, simply being, simply returning to the place where God has always been waiting. This practice, beloved, is not difficult, it is only forgotten. The world has taught you to live on the surface, to chase thoughts as if they were truth, to confuse movement with meaning, noise with knowledge, stimulation with presence. But now you are remembering. The greatest power is stillness, the highest wisdom is awareness, and the clearest voice is silence. Practice this gazano as a ritual, but as a homecoming. Each time you pause and look inward, not just with eyes but with being, you take one more step back into the listening self. Do not wait for fireworks, do not seek visions. Just listen in that listening know, I am, for it is written, and it is true. The kingdom of God is within you. Not above, not later, not elsewhere. But here, right now, behind the mind, beneath the breath, before every reaction. In the timeless space where you are not becoming anything, you are simply returning to what you never cease to be. The soul does not struggle to hear, it remembers that it is already held in his voice. Let us remain in this witnessing presence a moment longer. Breathe softly. Inhale, I am awareness. Exhale, I am peace. Inhale, I hear through stillness. Exhale, I see through God. Let this breath, this still gaze, this silent watching become your compass. And now, strengthened in remembrance, we shall prepare to bring this presence into the living rhythm of your day's morning, noon and night, so that you no longer visit God, but abide in Him always. Come, let us now learn to live the sacred rhythms of inner bravery, so the soul may hear what the mind forgot. Beloved soul, the morning is not simply the beginning of the day, it is the return of your consciousness from the shadows of sleep, the gentle ascent of awareness from the deep cave of unconsciousness back into the sacred chamber of choice. And it is here, in these first precious minutes after waking, that the soul stands closest to the veil of spirit, unburdened by the duties, distractions, and voices that will soon press upon you. And so I say to you, do not give your first breath to the world, for the world did not give it to you. Give it to God, who has sustained you through the night and called you once again to remembrance. Before you touch your phone, before you reach for obligation, before you sip the day's first drink, sit upright as soon as you are aware, and bring your attention, not your effort, not your strain, just your pure attention into your spine, into your breath, into your spiritual eye. For the soul wakes in silence, but the mind wakes with noise, and you must choose now which one you will live from. Begin by placing your feet or your seat firmly upon the earth, not as a habit, but as a sacred grounding, a declaration that you are no longer merely drifting through time, but arriving fully into presence. Then draw the breath slowly through the nose and exhale fully through the mouth once or twice to clear the airways, to empty yesterday, to make space for the sacred. And now begin your sacred ritual, not with words, but with stillness. Close your eyes gently, not to shut the world out, but to turn the gaze inward and lift your awareness to the spiritual eye, not as if looking for something, but as if remembering something already present. Feel the spine like a golden staff, firm yet fluid, ancient yet alive, and let your breath gently rise and fall through it, as though your body were a flute God wishes to play. Now I offer you 3 sacred questions, not to answer with the mind, but to let dissolve gently into your awareness, like seeds planted in silence that will bloom in divine timing. Whisper them within, like holy echoes. What would peace do today? Let it settle into your chest, What is God asking in this moment? Feel it stir the heart. What must I release to hear him clearly? And exhale whatever rises, whether it is tension, memory, or the tight grip of control. Do not analyze. Do not solve. Just ask and wait and listen. This is not performance. This is not productivity. This is priesthood, the soul returning to its altar before the temple of the day is open to the world. With each breath aligned to God, the static begins to lift, the mental fog clears, and what once felt far becomes near again. You will feel it not as drama, but as a holy hush, a subtle expansion, a quiet readiness. This is not your strength, it is the surrender of all false strength. This is not your clarity, it is the fading of all the mind's illusions. And so I give you this affirmation to begin each day, not as magic, but as alignment. I begin the day with the silence of God. Repeat it now. Whisper it like a vow. Let it be the first declaration of your reawakened soul. I begin the day with the silence of God. Again, I begin the day with the silence of God. And now, carry that silence with you, like a fragrance that precedes you, like a current that uplifts you, like a compass that always knows the way home. For when the morning is given to God, the rest of the day bends like light toward his voice. And now that the morning is clear, we shall prepare for the next sacred rhythm, the noonday recalibration, where the soul pauses again not to retreat, but to realign. Come, let us learn to return mid-journey, lest we be swept away. O beloved pilgrim of the Spirit, you who began your day in holy silence, you who rose from sleep into soul remembrance, you who dared to sit in stillness while the world began to run, do not now forget what you remembered when the sun was still young and your breath was still anchored in God. For the noise of the day, like a wind through a canyon, seeks to erode the contours of your devotion with its demands, its tasks, its urgency. And if you are not vigilant, not with tension, but with love, you will find yourself again caught in the very current you escaped at dawn. Your feet no longer on sacred ground, but on shifting sand, and the whisper of God once again drowned beneath the roar of your thoughts. That is why I give you now the sacred practice of midday return, not long, not elaborate, but essential, a moment in which the soul steps out of the machinery of time and remembers eternity. Not a retreat, but a recalibration. Not a withdrawal, but a re-anchoring in what is real. Choose a quiet moment, perhaps after your meal, or before your next task, and wherever you are, whether seated at your desk or walking in solitude or even hidden in the crowd, pause inwardly and bring one hand gently to your heart, not as a gesture of sentiment, but as a sign of your vow to return to the source. Breathe slowly, not with effort, but with reverence, as if you were listening to the voice of the infinite writing each inhale and being cleansed of all illusion with each exhale. Let the breath be the bell that calls you back from the temple of the mind to the sanctuary of the soul. And now, whisper this phrase silently within, again and again, until it becomes your atmosphere. This thought is not me. God is. Say it with honesty, with humility, with devotion, not to deny the thought, but to disidentify from it, not to judge it, but to see through it. For the mind, as I have told you, is a voice that echoes only the past. But God speaks now, only now, always now, and to hear him, you must be where he is in the now. As you breathe and repeat this phrase, notice the loosening, the softening, the subtle shift from thinking to being, from contraction to expansion, from effort to presence. You may feel warmth in the chest, or a quiet sigh of relief, or a gentle lifting at the point between the eyebrows. Do not chase these signs, but welcome them. They are not the goal, they are the fragrance of your return. With each breath, let the body become less of a cage and more of a chalice. Let the mind become less of a judge and more of a sky. Let the soul arise not in grand vision, but in quiet remembrance. And now, as you return to your work, to your duties, to your outer responsibilities, do not carry the noise with you, carry the silence. Do not carry the story, carry the awareness. Do not carry the effort, carry the gaze. For even while acting, you may remain anchored in stillness. Even while speaking, you may listen inwardly. Even while moving through the world, you may walk as one who knows they are not from it. And should the mind rise again like a wave, do not battle it, bow to it, and return to the breath, return to the phrase, return to the center, This thought is not me. God is. In this way, midday becomes not a turning point of fatigue or forgetfulness, but a sacred threshold, a chance to choose again, to realign, to reaffirm what the morning taught you. And now that the sun has climbed high and begins its descent, you too shall prepare to descend not into sleep, but into nightly reflection, into the final practice of remembrance before rest. Come, let us walk together through the temple of the day in reverse, that we may leave no part of it outside the gaze of God. And now, O child of the eternal light, as the sun bows down behind the western sky and the earth itself begins to hush and close its petals for the sleep of night, I invite you also to close the petals of your outward gaze, to step back from the noise and form of the world you walk through today, and to re-enter the sacred cave of inner remembrance where the divine lamp is never extinguished, where the voice of God has waited patiently not in hours or words or drama but in the still core of your being, behind every breath, beneath every moment, beyond every thought. For just as the soul begins the day with light, so too must it end the day with light. And between these two dawns sown of body, one of spirit, you must learn to become the watcher, the silent seer, the soul who was always there, observing from the balcony while the mind played its shifting roles upon the stage of the day. Now I give you the practice that I myself followed and taught to my disciples, the nightly soul review, the divine cinema of awareness, where you become both witness and student, not in judgment, not in guilt, but in luminous clarity, for the purpose is not to criticize the self, but to cleanse the mirror of perception so that the pure reflection of God may once again shine through. Sit upright on your bed, or lie down with spine straight and heart open, not to sleep, but to see, and now let the breath flow gently and evenly, as if each exhale is the passing of time, and each inhale is the recall of spirit, and begin to review the day, but not from morning to night, no, begin in reverse. For to watch the river of action backward is to step out of its current and regain your place upon the shore. Go backward gently, from this moment now, to the conversation before bed, to the thoughts that filled the evening, to the meal you consumed, to the task you performed, to the moment of the midday pause, to the action that preceded it, and on, all the way to the first breath you took upon waking. Do not linger, do not analyze, simply see. Observe where your mind took the reins, where fear entered, where anger stirred, where pride flared, where peace was forgotten, where stillness was offered but declined. Then observe also, with reverence, where you remembered, where the silence touched you, where God's presence briefly passed like a fragrance through your awareness, where your heart softened, where your breath deepened, where a word of kindness came not from habit but from the soul, and give thanks not as reward, but as return. You may find moments of unconsciousness blanks where the ego ruled. Bless them. You may feel regret. Let it rise and then release it. For this practice is not for holding, it is for cleansing. It is not for control, it is for communion. And now, as you near the beginning of the day, as you arrive at the first thought that entered your mind upon waking, breathe deeply and whisper inwardly, even now, I return to stillness. Say it again. Even now, I return to stillness. Let the words not only move through your mind, but settle into your body, like a balm upon the heart, like the quiet footfall of the soul re-entering its own temple. This is how the day becomes sacred, not by what you achieved, but by how you remembered, not by how many spoke to you, but by how often you heard God whisper in silence, not by how much you controlled, but by how deeply you surrendered. This nightly review, my beloved, is the prayer that does not use language, the meditation that turns time into teacher, the devotion that sees all things joy and error, triumph and stumblious offerings placed upon the altar of awakening. And now, as the body begins to soften into sleep, as the senses prepare to dissolve into dreams, let your final awareness be not of the bed beneath you, nor the world behind you, but of the soul within you, shining like a lamp that no darkness can extinguish. Place your breath gently at the spiritual eye. Whisper inwardly one final time. Even now, I return to stillness. And as you fall into rest, may the silence carry you homeward. For God waits not in a distant place, but in the space where thoughts end and truth begins. And now, let us seal all these practices, all these returns, with one final charge to the soul, the call that awakens remembrance in every seeker who has longed to hear the voice behind the voice, the love beneath the longing, the presence behind all appearances. Come, let us walk into the silence that reveals all. And now, O beloved, as the final moments of this sacred journey draw near and the lamp of understanding flickers gently in the temple of your heart, I invite you to pause, not merely to end, but to enter the space between sound, the hush beneath thought, the breathless stillness where words become inadequate, where identity dissolves like morning mist beneath the sun of divine knowing, and where the whisper of God, so long obscured by the orchestra of the restless mind, begins at last to rise, not as a voice with syllables, not as an instruction with form, but as a presencia knowinga sacred vibration that neither begins nor ends, but simply is, always was, and ever shall be. You have heard me say, and I say it again with the fire of eternity behind each syllable, God has never stopped speaking. The problem was never his silence, but your noise, the mind's theater, with its judgments and comparisons and calculations and fears, playing endlessly before the soul like shadows on a screen, convincing you that this drama is the only truth, when in reality it is but flickering illusion, projected upon the changeless canvas of your own divine self. The mind lies, not because it is evil, but because it is limited, and when you confuse its echoes with God's voice, you fall asleep within the dream and forget that you are the dreamer, that you are the light from which even the dream is made. But now, having walked this path, having breathed with awareness, having stilled the waves of thought, having practiced the sacred rituals of silence and observation and return, you are no longer merely a wanderer in the wilderness of mind. You are becoming the witness of all movement, the still center of all experience, the soul who remembers its home not in form, but in essence, not in noise, but in stillness, not in identity, but in spirit. And so I tell you now, and listen closely, for these words are not mine, they are the eternal call of your own divine nature speaking through me. I am not the noise, I am the soul that hears. God is not far. God is silence itself. Let these words become not a thought, but a doorway. Step into them now, gently, like one returning to a sanctuary after many lifetimes of forgetting. Close your eyes, not in escape, but in entrance. Gaze softly at the point between the eyebrows, and let the breath become like a feather so light, so still, so sacred. Inhale slowly, whisper within, I remember. Exhale fully, I return. Inhale again, I remember. Exhale, I return. And now let the breath pause, not in force, but in reverence, and in that pause, in that space where no thought enters, listen not with ears, not with effort, but with the sulan you will begin to sense it, the quiet current, the sacred hum, the river of light moving beneath all things, the soundless song of God resounding in eternity. This is the moment when remembrance becomes reality, when silence becomes sanctuary, when the voice of the infinite pierces the veil not through thunder, but through the feathered wing of presence. Do not look for signs. Do not chase sensations. Simply remain. Remain in this silence as long as you can. And when you must return to the world, return as one who walks in two worlds, doing, but not attached, speaking, but inwardly listening, moving, but ever anchored in the stillness that reveals all. Now I ask you, if the heart stirred, if the soul trembled, if you glimpsed even for a moment that which cannot be spoken, then do not let this truth dissolve into memory. Make it your vow. Write it upon the doorway of your days. And if you feel called, declare it now aloud, not for others, but for yourself. I hear God in stillness. Write it below, if you must. Etch it into the temple of your being. Say it each morning before the world awakens. Say it each night before sleep folds the day into mystery. Say it in joy, say it in pain. Say it until it becomes the atmosphere of your consciousness. I hear God in stillness. And now, I bless you, not as a teacher to a student, but as a soul to a soul, as one flame to another, as the silence in me greeting the silence in you. May the silence in you grow louder than all fear. May your breath carry God's whisper through every moment of every day. May your soul know again what the mind forgot, and may you walk through this world, not seeking the voice, but radiating the presence. For in the end, beloved, God is not a voice to be heard, but a light to be remembered, a silence to be entered, a truth to be lived. Now be still, be whole, be light. Each morning when you awaken and find the sunlight gently painting the sky, do you pause to remember who gave it to you? Do you sit for even a moment with the invisible presence that breathed life into your body through the night and into this new day? I ask you this not to invoke guilt, but to remind you that your soul longs for something deeper than schedules, news, and the constant mental chatter that invades the sacred temple of your morning consciousness. You are not truly longing for more time, more answers, or even more happiness. You are longing for God. You are longing to feel Him not once a year in a church, not once a week in meditation, but now, here, in this breath, in this moment where He waits in silence for you to remember Him again. The greatest sorrow of man is not death or failure or even suffering. It is the unspoken ache of separation from the divine. And yet, how can you be separate from that which made you? How can the wave be separate from the sea? It is not God who has hidden Himself. It is your own restlessness, your own over-identification with outer experiences that has dimmed your inner sight. God is always present, closer than breath, nearer than heartbeat, but like the sun behind drifting clouds, He remains unseen to the eye that is distracted by the illusions of the passing world. If your life feels hollow, if your peace feels fleeting, it is not because God is absent, it is because your attention has strayed. The lamp of the soul is always burning, but you have turned your face toward the shadows on the wall. The solution is not in doing more, acquiring more, or even thinking more. It is in returning to the still center where God has always been. That is why I say to you now, if you would feel God in every moment, you must first stop trying to find Him with the mind, and instead allow your soul to remember Him through devotion, through breath, through presence. God is the eternal now. He does not arrive later, nor did He slip away before. He is here, but your awareness is often elsewhere. That is why, my beloved, we must build a daily practice not to bring God to us, but to bring us back to God. Let us begin this sacred return together, step by step, not as a ritual of obligation, but as a path of divine romance. You may walk the same streets, speak the same words, and fulfill the same duties, but you shall do them not as one lost in forgetfulness, but as one who walks with the beloved. Come, I will show you how to feel God not someday, not only in meditation, but right now, in this moment, and in the next, and in the one after that, until your whole life becomes a living temple, where the divine presence is not merely believed, but felt like light behind the eyes, like stillness within the breath, like sweetness rising from the core of your being. You must understand, deeply and irrevocably, that the presence of God is not something to be summoned like a faraway king who must be petitioned through elaborate ritual or earned through perfection of conduct or memorization of sacred verse, but rather, it is the fundamental essence of your own being, the ever-existent backdrop behind every breath you take, the silent witness behind every thought, every movement, every sorrow, and every joy. Presence that has never been absent, though you have wandered far in thought, in fear, in distraction, and in the dream play of Maya that draws the attention outward into the impermanent theater of forms. God is not found in the ticking of time, nor in the destinations of future hopes or the ruins of past regrets. He is not hiding behind the stars or confined to holy buildings made of stone, but lives in the cathedral of your consciousness, in the breath that rises without your command, in the quiet current that runs through your spine, in the gentle awareness behind your seeing eyes, presence that cannot be added to, only remembered. That is why I say, God is not a distant presence to be earned or acquired, but the very substance of your nowness, the vibration of spirit that underlies this in every moment, waiting not for worthiness, but for attention, waiting not to be called down from the heavens, but to be uncovered in the stillness that already resides in the temple of your soul. The mind, ever busy, believes it must journey outward to locate God, as though He were a treasure buried beneath layers of action and analysis, as though He existed only in flashes of ecstasy or dramatic revelation. But I tell you, He is here, now, always. And the only distance between you and that eternal presence is the interference of thought, the restless forgetting of the mind that clings to identity, to preference, to fear, and fails to see that beneath the wave of self is the ocean of spirit. God is the background silence behind every sound, the eternal witness behind every changing experience. And it is not He who hides, but you who, in turning toward the noise, miss the song that never ceases. Breathe with me now, slowly and gently, and as you inhale, say within yourself, God is now, and as you exhale, whisper to your heart, I am here. Let your breath become a prayer that draws your awareness back to the center, that lifts the veil between you and the presence that was never gone. This is not imagination, it is revelation. This is not fantasy, it is remembrance. Do not seek some thunderous voice or vision to prove that God is with you. Instead, close your eyes and feel the warmth behind your chest, the tingling at the brow, the invisible current of joy that needs no name, that is Him. The scriptures of East and West have always spoken the same truth. Lo, I am with you always, said the Christ. The Lord dwells in the hearts of all beings, declares the Gita, but the question is not whether God is near. Question is, will you attune your attention? Will you still your breath? Will you clear the glass through which you peer into the mirror of divine presence and finally see not a distant deity, but the eternal friend who is waiting behind your every breath, the light that lives behind your every thought, the beloved that sings beneath the surface of every moment? Let us continue, and I will show you how to make your morning not a rush into the world, but a sacred unveiling of God who walks beside you, who lives within you, who breathes your breath and waits to be known again, not someday, but this very day. When you open your eyes each morning, do not immediately fling your awareness into the chaos of the day. Do not reach for the machine that glows with the world's noise and schedules and endless distractions, but instead let your very first act be a holy act, a moment of sacred remembering, a whisper of your soul to the infinite saying, Beloved, I have not forgotten you. And in that remembrance, before even your feet touch the floor, sit upright in your bed with your spine aligned like a golden rod channeling the divine current upward toward the heavens, and let your hands rest softly on your lap or heart, and let your breath rise not with anxiety, but with reverence, and let the eyes close gently, turning inward from the sensory drama of the world and focusing tenderly at the point between the eyebrows, the spiritual eye, the sacred doorway through which the soul communes with the one who is always near. In this holy moment of waking, say to the infinite silently or aloud, reveal thyself in this new day, not as a demand, not as a plea of desperation, but as a quiet invitation, a loving beckoning of the soul to the beloved, a gentle lifting of the veil that habit places over the divine, and then simply sits it not with expectation, but with reverence, not waiting for a sign, but opening to a presence, not seeking sensation, but surrendering into awareness. For it is in that receptive stillness that God, who needs no words, begins to stir within your heart, like the warmth of an unseen sun rising behind your chest. This is the practice I give you to begin each day, not with your thoughts racing toward tasks and fears, but with your heart resting in God. For if you learn to start the day from that center, you will carry that presence like a fragrance through every hour, through every conversation, through every joy and every trial. And you will begin to notice that even when the noise of life grows loud, there is a silent song still singing within you, and that song is God. Now, in this stillness, let your gaze remain gently lifted to the spiritual eye, not straining, not forcing, but lightly. As a flower turns toward the sunand, feel your breath as a sacred wind, entering and leaving the temple of your body without effort. And as you inhale, silently affirm, I awake in God. And as you exhale, say within, this day is God's. And if you repeat this 3 times with concentration and love, you will feel something stirring it outside of you, but within, a subtle expansion, a deepening of peace, a presence that needs no proof, because it is self-evident, self-existing, self-aware. Do not think of this as meditation in the formal sense, though it may grow into that, but think of it as greeting the infinite, as placing your awareness in the arms of your Divine Mother before you place your feet upon the ground of this fleeting world. And when at last you do rise, do so not with the burden of being a separate self marching into duty, but with the quiet joy of a soul who knows that no step is taken alone, that every breath is shared, and that God walks with you now, not in concept, but in conscious companionship. Let me now show you how to breathe in that presence with sacred rhythm, how to draw the formless spirit into form, through breath, through mantra, through the temple of your own awareness. Shall I continue? Now that the stillness of divine remembrance has gently opened the gateway of your soul at the dawn of the day, let us breathe not as the body breathes, automatically and unconsciously, but as the soul breathes when it remembers that each inhalation is a prayer and each exhalation a surrender. For breath is the sacred bridge between the visible and the invisible, the movement of spirit through flesh, the silent messenger that carries the soul's longing upward toward its source. And when you learn to breathe with reverence, with rhythm, with conscious stillness, you are no longer just inhaling air, you are drawing divine intelligence into your body, awakening dormant memory, and reuniting your scattered awareness into one luminous flame that rises toward God. Sit now, wherever you are, not with stiffness or strain, but with quiet dignity, with your spine erect like the staff of a high priest, crowned with the gaze uplifted to the spiritual eye, not with tension, but with tenderness, as though you are looking upon the doorway of your eternal home, and begin to breathe in the sacred rhythm I give to you, a rhythm not invented but revealed through inner communion. Inhale slowly, to the count of 6, not counting, with the mind's rigidity but with the heart's gentleness. Hold the breath for 6 counts in stillness, allowing that divine current to rise through the spine like golden light traveling a luminous ladder. Then exhale to the count of 6, feeling all that is restless or fragmented melt away into the vast silence. And finally pause in that stillness for another 6 counts, not as emptiness, but as fullness beyond form, as the womb of spirit where no thought intrudes and only God remains. Do this cycle 3 times, and as you inhale, let your mind be filled with the silent vibration of the mantra Aum, not chanted aloud but felt within, a soundless sound echoing in the temple of the inner ear. And as you hold the breath, imagine that Aum flowing upward from the base of the spine to the point between the eyebrows, carrying your soul with it like a pilgrim ascending to a sacred shrine. And as you exhale, let that divine vibration ripple through your body, cleansing, harmonizing, anointing every cell, until all of you vibrates in silent unison with that eternal word that was with God and is God. This is not mere breathing, it is communion, it is offering, it is return. And when you begin your day with this breath, you begin it not as a separate being tossed by karma, by moods, by the opinions of others, but as a soul seated in its center, attuned to the one presence that never changes, never leaves, never sleeps. And you will find that even as the day unfolds with its countless interactions, a part of you remains untouched, anchored, humming quietly with the vibration of Aum, because you have tuned your inner radio to the frequency of the divine, and that station plays not news or fear or noise, but peace, joy, guidance, and above all companionship. You may practice this for 5 minutes or for 1. What matters is not the duration, but the devotion, not the precision of the count, but the sincerity of the offering. And I promise you, if you give yourself to this breath each morning, not as duty, but as love, you will begin to notice that God no longer feels distant, but near, not hidden, but silently shining through all things, especially through you, and your very breath will become a chariot that returns you again and again to His presence. Shall I now take you deeper into how to walk through the day with this remembrance alive in your every step, in your gaze, in your gestures, so that even the mundane becomes the miraculous and the ordinary becomes an altar? Let me continue, if you are ready. And now, beloved soul, having touched the stillness at dawn and breathed the divine name into the corridors of your being, you are ready to carry that vibration into the living current of the day, not by clinging to silence and resistance to life, but by turning every moment into a prayer, every action into an altar, every breath into a sacred, remembering that God is not only in the temple or the sunrise or the song, but is in your hands as they work, in your eyes as they see, in your ears as they listen, in your feet as they walk, not as something you must search for, but as the very presence that is already there, veiled only by your forgetfulness, never by His absence. And so I say, walk with sacred attention. Attention, when purified of restlessness, becomes devotion. And devotion, when practiced in daily life, becomes presence. And presence is the lamp that reveals God in all things. So begin now, not with grand efforts or impossible goals, but with small remembrances repeated often, like beads on a rosary of hours strung together by the golden thread of awareness, so that whether you are washing your hands, tying your shoes, speaking to a friend, or walking down the street, you say inwardly, not aloud but in the temple of your heart, God, you are here. And with that one phrase, you turn the profane into the sacred, the forgotten into the remembered, and you align your outer life with the silent stream of divine vibration that runs beneath the surface of all activity. This is not imagination. It is realization. For the moment you say with sincerity, God is in this moment, the veil begins to lift, and what seemed ordinary becomes luminous, what seems separate becomes unified, and you no longer feel alone, because your soul begins to feel the nearness of the one who is always near. And soon, this becomes your spiritual habit, your invisible practice, and it matters not whether you are doing spiritual work or worldly work, because all work done with sacred attention becomes spiritualized. And every task, no matter how mundane, becomes holy when offered in presence and performed with awareness of God. So I invite you, whenever you remember, to whisper inwardly, this moment is holy. Even if you are doing something repetitive, even if your mind resists, even if your mood is low, especially then, for that is when the practice becomes most powerful, most transformative, most like love. Because love does not wait for beauty to be present. It brings beauty to wherever it is directed. And when you offer attention to God in the middle of a dishwashing moment, or a traffic jam, or a quiet sigh in the middle of your workday, you are offering your heart at the feet of the divine without fanfare, without audience, and yet the heavens take note. For the soul grows more through sincere attention than through the loudest declarations or the grandest gestures. Scripture says, in Him we live and move and have our being, but how often do we truly feel that to be true? You can begin now, not tomorrow, not when you are more holy, not when you have more time, but now. In the midst of your ordinary day, you can begin to walk with God not by reaching for Him as if He were elsewhere, but by letting your awareness fall back into the now, by returning again and again to the truth that He is closer than your breath, nearer than your thoughts, more constant than the rhythm of your heart. And all you must do is look, not with your eyes, but with the inward gaze of love. Shall I now guide you into how to pause, even briefly, in the middle of your day, not as escape, but as return, so that the current of sacred attention becomes not a morning spark but a midday flame? Let us continue. Now, my dear one, let us walk more deeply into the midday hours, when the clamor of the world has risen around you, when responsibilities tug at your garment of peace, and the early morning stillness you once held so tenderly has slipped behind the veil of motion, conversation, noise, and thought, and it is here, precisely here in the bright press of ordinary life, that the sacred art of returning becomes your golden thread back to divine intimacy. For while the mind believes that God is found only in silence or sanctuary, the awakened soul knows that even amidst the clamor, even within the market, even beneath the sound of a ringing phone or a closing door, there is a presence more silent than the noise and more constant than your shifting focus. And that presence is not asking for perfection, but remembrance. And so I tell you, do not wait for the day to slow down before you return to God. Instead, make the return your act of devotion in the very midst of your busyness, like a lover who glances at a hidden letter in the pocket between meetings, like a musician who hums the sacred melody under his breath, even while carrying water. For just as the flower does not ask the sun's permission to turn toward the light, your soul need not wait for the world to give you peace before you reclaim it by pausing, even for a few seconds, to say, Beloved, I have not forgotten. And in that pause, in that still moment between breaths, heaven rushes in like a tide that never stopped rising. Take this simple practice with you, once at midday or twice, or 3 times if the heart stirs. Stop, even for just a breath, and place your hand upon your heart, not as gesture but as remembrance. For within your heart lies the silent altar where the flame of God is always burned. And as you close your eyes, even if for 10 seconds, let the external world fall away like a discarded garment. And in that small gesture, the eternal temple opens again, and your breath becomes the incense rising, and the mantra within you begins to whisper, This moment is holy. I am not alone. God, you are here. And you may weep, or you may smile, or you may feel nothing at all, but the act is the prayer, and your willingness is the offering. And even if the emotions do not stir, the soul rejoices in your return, for you are touching the hem of God's robe in the crowd of life. And in that instant, something shifts not outwardly, but inwardly, and you begin to feel what no sense can grasp and no word can capture. The divine nearness that was never far, the silence that was never absent, the sweetness that lives underneath all form and motion. This, beloved, is how you weave the invisible into the visible, not by escaping life, but by infusing it with awareness, not by running away from noise, but by planting stillness in the center of sound, not by waiting for peace, but by choosing to be the one who pauses, remembers, breathes, and returns again and again to the presence that is always here, waiting behind the veil of your attention. Shall I guide you now into the sacred closing of the day, the hour when the body begins to quiet, when the mind releases its grip, and the soul, if invited, may rise like a gentle prayer into the arms of the beloved who never sleeps? Let us continue. And now, as the sun sinks beneath the horizon and the rhythms of the outer world begin to slow, I call you, my beloved, into a sacred rite that is older than Scripture and more intimate than any sermon, a ritual not of words but of watching, not of doctrine but of remembrance. For before you surrender to the mystery of sleep, when the body yields to stillness and the breath prepares to slip into its nighttime rhythm, there opens a most precious window, a final hour of return, a last moment of conscious reunion with the eternal before you sail the quiet seas of dream. And it is here that the soul whispers, "Let me look upon this day with God's eyes." Do not let the day pass like a stone thrown into the well of forgetfulness. No, take it back into your hands, like a string of sacred pearls, and observe it with the still gaze of the soul, not to judge, not to mourn, not to analyze, but to see where the light of God flickered in your awareness and where the fog of forgetfulness crept in unseen trace, your steps not forward but backward. From this moment of quiet reclining, to the laughter you shared, the work you completed, the conversations spoken, the thoughts that rose and passed, the glances you gave to others, the breath you may not have noticed, and with each recollection, whisper gently within, "Was I walking with thee then, or did I walk alone, lost in the noise of the world?" This is the nightly soul review, not a ritual of punishment, but a sacred mirror for the divine gaze to fall gently upon the landscape of your day, illuminating not your mistakes, but your moments of amnesia, and more so, your quiet victories, your breath-born prayers, the times you chose patience over reaction, the seconds you remembered to say thank you, the glance you lifted toward the spiritual eye when no one saw. And in these, the soul rejoices, for they are the golden threads that stitch together the unseen garment of your awakening. And it matters not how much you stumbled, but that now, in this quiet hour, you choose to see, you choose to return, you choose to say, "Even now I come back to thee." And do not worry if you do not remember every detail, for even your willingness to look is a light that heals. And if you feel pain, guilt, or sorrow over moments when God was forgotten, bring even that into your silent prayer. For the divine is not a stern judge waiting to scold the forgetful, but a loving mother who rejoices each time her child remembers to call her name. And if tears come, let them wash you clean. And if silence comes, let it hold you. And if only weariness remains, let that too be your offering. So before sleep claims your body, sit or lie quietly with closed eyes and a heart wide open, and mentally move through the day in reverse from evening to morning, like rewinding the film of your life. And as each scene plays in your mind's eye, let it dissolve into light, into blessing, into offering, until the whole day is no longer a story of doing or forgetting, but a temple you entered and exited, and you say not, "What did I accomplish?" but rather, "Where did I walk with God? Where did I leave him outside the door? And where even now can I return?" And when this sacred review has quieted your mind and stilled your heart, whisper to the infinite in whatever words arise from the well of your devotion, "Beloved, take this day. I place it in thy hands. Let its moments become incense in thy temple. Let my stumblings become steps. Let my forgetfulness become fuel for deeper longing. Let all I was today lead me back to what I eternally am in thee." This is the holy preparation of the soul before it sleeps, not the noise of scrolling, not the heaviness of regret, but the soft returning of your gaze to the face that never turned away. And as you close your eyes, know this: you do not fall into unconsciousness, but into the arms of the one who was awake in you all along. And as the body sleeps, the soul may rise to the throne of God, carrying in its hands the golden harvest of a single day remembered in love. Shall we now conclude this sacred night with a final prayer of surrender? Let us. And now, my beloved, as the final embers of the day's fire grow dim and the hush of night begins to soften the edges of all things, come, lie gently in the lap of the infinite, not as one who retreats from the world, but as one who returns to the secret sanctuary of the soul's eternal dwelling. And here, in this inward temple that requires no walls, no chants, no candles, only your pure attention and silent love, I invite you to enter the last act of holy surrender, not as a performance, not as duty, but as a divine romance, a soul offering of your entire being into the waiting arms of Spirit, who has watched every breath you took, who walked invisibly beside every step you made, who wept when you forgot, and rejoiced each time you remembered that you were never alone. Let your prayer be without strain, for the infinite responds not to volume, but to vibration, not to cleverness, but to sincerity. And if no words come, then be still and feel. And if no feelings come, then breathe and wait. And if waiting feels empty, then offer even the emptiness itself. For God listens beneath the surface of language, beneath the structure of thought, beneath even the emotion, and receives most fully the raw and honest essence of your offering. So speak, if you must, from the heart, perhaps saying, Divine Mother, this day I give to thee not because it was perfect, but because it was min and what is mine, I place in thine arms now. Take it, make of it a garland of learning and devotion, that tomorrow I may walk more awake in thy presence. As you lie down, let your spine lengthen gently, your body soften like petals closing at dusk, and your breath slow into a rhythm of surrender. And then quietly, silently, sweetly draw your inner gaze upward, to that sacred point between the eyebrows, the divine eye through which the soul sees the beloved, the hidden door through which Spirit enters the temple of your being, and rest your awareness there, not forcefully but faithfully, like a child gazing into the face of the mother he has finally found. And as the breath flows in, feel peace descending from that point, like a silver stream bathing your chest, your belly, your limbs. And as the breath flows out, release every thought, every worry, every memory of the day, as if you were exhaling clouds to reveal the eternal sky of God's presence. Let this sacred breath become your lullaby. Inhale peace from the top of the head to the soles of the feet. Feel that peace ripple through every cell like moonlight on water. And as you exhale, say inwardly, I release, I surrender, I return. And if drowsiness comes, do not resist it, let it be the curtain falling on the stage of the day, for you have already offered the play to the director, and the final act is his to write. And as your body falls asleep, let your soul remain gazing, even slightly, even dimly, toward the light, toward the giver of all dreams, the author of this life, the one whose love sleeps not, and whose nearness knows no distance. If fears arise, say gently within, Thou art my refuge. Even now, I rest in thee. If regrets appear, reply within, All is forgiven, all is past. I dwell in the eternal now. And if joy flows like a stream, then drink of it silently and let it carry you into the breathless garden where the divine walks with the soul under the stars of eternity. This, dear one, is not the end of your day. It is the gateway to the night vigil of Spirit within you, who never ceases to call, who never ceases to wait, who now wraps you in the light of remembrance and whispers through the corridors of your sleep, You are mine. Even in dreams, you are not separate. You are mine. Shall we now shine a light upon the hidden barriers, the subtle shadows that sometimes block this feeling of God's presence, so that you may learn how to remove them and return again and again to this holy nearness? Let us. And now, O soul who longs to live with God as breath lives with wind and light lives with flame, let me speak gently to the part of you that wonders why, despite the prayers you've whispered, the breaths you've watched, the scriptures you've read, the silence you've kept, There are still moments, hours, even days when the presence of the divine feels distant, when your chest feels hollow and your thoughts run dry, and the warm feeling of God's nearness that once burned so brightly seems to vanish like mist in the heat of noon. Yes, let me speak to that part of you, not with rebuke, but with the soft balm of clarity. For the problem is not with your soul, which is ever united with spirit, but with the clouds of forgetfulness that pass before your inner sky, and though they seem to veil the sun, they cannot extinguish its light. Why do you not feel God? Not because God is far, but because your attention has wandered. Not because He has withdrawn, but because your gaze has lowered. Not because you are unworthy, but because you have forgotten what you already are, made of His light, carved of His silence, born from the womb of His eternal compassion. And what are these clouds? These veils that drift between your heart and the Holy One? They are not sins in the sense of punishment, they are simply distractions, misalignments of perception, like trying to hear a violin amid the roar of machines, like searching for moonlight with your eyes fixed on a blazing screen, like trying to touch the ocean while digging in dry sand. These obstacles are subtle but strong. The endless noise of thoughts that do not serve you, the heavy fog of busyness that numbs your inner perception, the old whisper of guilt that says you are too flawed to be loved by perfection, the quiet ache of unworthiness that creeps in when you compare your path to others and think, they are close to God, I am still so far. But all of these are illusions born of Maya, the cosmic hypnosis that has one purpose: to make you forget what cannot be lost, your eternal union with God. When you don't feel God, do not panic, do not run, do not say, I have failed, but instead pause wherever you are. Yes, even now, in the middle of this sentence, and say inwardly, even if only as a whisper from your tired heart, you are here. I have wandered, but you have not. You are here. And as you say this, do not wait for a feeling to prove it. Faith is not born of feeling, but of inner knowing. And even if no warmth arises, even if the silence feels dry, even if your prayer feels like a stone skipping over still water, still say it. You are here. For in that moment, you are not inviting God into your presence. You are inviting your presence back into God. This is the practice of holy return. Not dramatic, not emotional, not complicated, but quiet, constant, courageous. Each time you are distracted, return. Each time you forget, return. Each time the world swells loud, return. And with each return, the veil thins, the breath deepens, the heart softens, and suddenly, perhaps without warning, without effort, without fanfare, you feel it again. That subtle radiance in your chest, that vast stillness behind your gaze, that invisible embrace that seems to hold all of life in a single exhalation. And you remember, He was always here. He was never gone. It was only I who was looking away. So now, if your heart feels dry, say, even now I return. If your mind is racing, say, even now I return. If you feel ashamed or distant or confused, say with courage, even now I return. For this, beloved, is the secret. The return is the remembrance. The remembrance is the reconnection. And the reconnection is the revelation that you and God were never, ever apart. Let us now take this soul remembrance into a higher truth, into the full realization of your identity, not as a seeker stumbling toward God, but as one who already dwells in Him. Let us rise together. And now, O soul who longs to live with God as breath lives with wind and light lives with flame, let me speak gently to the part of you that wonders why, despite the prayers you've whispered, the breaths you've watched, the scriptures you've read, the silence you've kept, there are still moments, hours, even days when the presence of the divine feels distant, when your chest feels hollow and your thoughts run dry, and the warm feeling of God's nearness that once burned so brightly seems to vanish like mist in the heat of noon. Yes, let me speak to that part of you, not with rebuke, but with the soft balm of clarity. For the problem is not with your soul, which is ever united with spirit, but with the clouds of forgetfulness that pass before your inner sky, and though they seem to veil the sun, they cannot extinguish its light. Why do you not feel God? Not because God is far, but because your attention has wandered. Not because He has withdrawn, but because your gaze has lowered. Not because you are unworthy, but because you have forgotten what you already are made of. His light, carved of His silence, born from the womb of His eternal compassion. And what are these clouds? These veils that drift between your heart and the Holy One? They are not sins in the sense of punishment, they are simply distractions, misalignments of perception, like trying to hear a violin amid the roar of machines, like searching for moonlight with your eyes fixed on a blazing screen, like trying to touch the ocean while digging in dry sand. These obstacles are subtle but strong. The endless noise of thoughts that do not serve you, the heavy fog of busyness that numbs your inner perception, the old whisper of guilt that says you are too flawed to be loved by perfection, the quiet ache of unworthiness that creeps in when you compare your path to others and think, they are close to God, I am still so far. But all of these are illusions born of Maya, the cosmic hypnosis that has one purpose: to make you forget what cannot be lost, your eternal union with God. When you don't feel God, do not panic, do not run, do not say, I have failed, but instead pause wherever you are. Yes, even now, in the middle of this sentence, and say inwardly, even if only as a whisper from your tired heart, you are here. I have wandered, but you have not. You are here. And as you say this, do not wait for a feeling to prove it. Faith is not born of feeling, but of inner knowing. And even if no warmth arises, even if the silence feels dry, even if your prayer feels like a stone skipping over still water, still say it. You are here. For in that moment, you are not inviting God into your presence. You are inviting your presence back into God. This is the practice of holy return. Not dramatic, not emotional, not complicated, but quiet, constant, courageous. Each time you are distracted, return. Each time you forget, return. Each time the world swells, loud, return. And with each return, the veil thins, the breath deepens, the heart softens, and suddenly, perhaps without warning, without effort, without fanfare, you feel it again, that subtle radiance in your chest, that vast stillness behind your gaze, that invisible embrace that seems to hold all of life in a single exhalation. And you remember, He was always here, He was never gone. It was only I who was looking away. So now, if your heart feels dry, say, even now I return. If your mind is racing, say, even now I return. If you feel ashamed or distant or confused, say with courage, even now I return. For this, beloved, is the secret. The return is the remembrance. The remembrance is the reconnection. And the reconnection is the revelation that you and God were never, ever apart. Let us now take this soul remembrance into a higher truth, into the full realization of your identity, not as a seeker stumbling toward God, but as one who already dwells in Him. Let us rise together. And now, as this stream of remembrance flows into the ocean of your heart, let me pour upon you the blessing that has no words, and yet fills every syllable with light, the benediction that is not merely spoken but lived in silence, in stillness, in the way you now walk across the floor of your home with reverence, the way you breathe without urgency, the way you look upon the sky or a stranger, or your own reflection and whisper inwardly, Thou art that. For if you have heard me truly, if you have let the sacred rhythm of this daily practice enter not just your ears but your soul, then you no longer need to search for God, for your very life has become His echo, your very gaze His mirror, your very silence His language. You will now begin to feel Him in the warmth of your breath as it returns to your body upon waking, in the flicker of awareness between each thought, in the invisible thread of peace that winds itself around your actions when you perform them in stillness, in the pulsing aliveness of the heart when you forgive, when you surrender, when you simply exist without clinging or grasping or needing life to entertain you. For when you are present, truly present, you will discover the great secret, that presence and God are one and the same, that God is not a being hidden behind the clouds, waiting to be pleased or summoned, but is the very beingness of your own being, the aliveness of your own life, the stillness at the center of all movement, the light that watches behind every seeing. From this day forward, live as one who knows not believes, not hopes, not tries, but knows that God is not sometimes near and sometimes absent, but always nearer than near, closer than the breath, deeper than the thought, more real than the body, more eternal than the mind. And if ever again you forget, if ever again the clouds of distraction return or the ache of separation presses upon your heart, simply stop, become still, and say with all the devotion of your soul, You are here. I return. I remember. And in that remembering, all distances vanish. And in that return, all longing dissolves. And in that stillness, God is felt not as an idea, but as your very self. Now rise, beloved soul, not to escape the world, but to bless it, to carry this presence into your every word, into your every task, into your every breath, so that by your very being, others too may feel the divine, not because you speak of it, but because you have become it. Be the presence you seek. Be the silence through which God sings. Be the flame that never flickers. Be the one who walks with God not just in morning meditation, but in every sacred moment called now. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti Om. My beloved one, you were never meant to run on your own strength, nor were you sent into this world to live by the mere impulses of flesh, emotion, and thought. You are not a beggar at the gate of energy. You are the heir to a kingdom of divine power flowing ceaselessly through the subtle currents of your being. If you feel weary, depleted, overwhelmed by your emotions, or enslaved by racing thoughts, it is not because God has abandoned you, but because you have forgotten how to plug into the cosmic source that sustains stars and galaxies and the very breath that now rises in your chest. Most people try to light their homes with the flicker of a matchstick, when within them blazes the sun of spirit, unclaimed, waiting, yearning to pour forth through the temple of body and mind as strength, as peace, as joy without reason. You see, fatigue is not merely physical, it is spiritual amnesia. When the soul forgets its origin in God, when attention descends into the whirlpool of restlessness, when the gaze falls downward into body consciousness and does not lift again into the seat of Christ, or Krishna consciousness at the spiritual eye, then the divine current falters, like a river blocked by fallen trees, like a wire tangled and disconnected from its source. But oh, when you remember, when you lift your spine, straighten your temple, breathe with devotion and stillness, and whisper in your heart, reveal thyself, then a new kind of vitality begins to rise, not the strength of ambition, but the calm vigor of divine remembrance, not the anxious urgency of ego will, but the sovereign peace of soul command, not the illusion of control, but the alignment with that which needs no effort to flow because it is already perfect. So listen, my child, and feel this truth vibrate in your breath. The reason you feel powerless is not because you are empty, but because you have forgotten where fullness resides. Do not run outward, return inward. Do not grasp open. Do not push a line. For the power you seek is already seated in your spine, flowing silently behind the noise of thoughts, pulsing gently beneath the surface of your breath, singing a holy vibration that says not, do more, but be still and know that I am God. Let us now begin the sacred journey not to accumulate energy as the world teaches, but to awaken it as the soul remembers. Shall we continue? Let me take you into the first gate, where the current begins in the breath. Child of light, before you seek to master energy, you must understand its origin not in the body, nor in the foods you eat, nor in the fleeting emotions that surge and retreat, like waves in a storm-tossed sea, but in God, the eternal source of all vibration, the ocean of consciousness, whose invisible breath sustains every atom, every galaxy, every pulse of your own heartbeat, even when you sleep unaware of the divine tide that flows ceaselessly through your being. What you call energy is not merely electricity in the nerves or chemical spark in the cells. It is the vibration of spirit made visible, audible, and feelable through the 5 instruments of human perception, but it is far more than sensation. For true energy is God's consciousness moving in form. And when you understand this, when you begin to feel it not merely as momentum but as presence, then your relationship to energy will change from one of control to one of reverence, from one of depletion to one of alignment, from one of chasing force to one of entering flow. The kingdom of God is not in heaven alone, it is within you, said Jesus. And so did the great rishis who beheld the same truth in their own deep silences, that the current of divine energy flows not only around you, but through you, most especially in the central axis of your being, the astral spine, the luminous river of prana that parallels your physical backbone, rising upward from the base of the spine to the point between the eyebrows, from where you may begin to perceive, not merely think about, the sacred vibration of God's presence within. That astral spine is not physical, yet it feeds the physical. It cannot be dissected, yet it is more real than flesh. It cannot be seen by the material eye, yet in deep meditation you may behold it as a river of golden light, as a path of divine electricity, up which your consciousness may rise toward cosmic awareness, just as sap rises through the trunk of a tree to blossom in the open petals of a thousand-petaled crown. To the unawakened, energy is something to generate or hoard. But to the yogi, to the awakened soul, energy is something already flowing, already holy, already divine, waiting only to be remembered and reverently directed upward. You are not a generator, you are a channel. You are not a factory of power, you are a temple of divine current. And the more still you become, the more open your breath, the more uplifted your gaze, the more you will feel that power, not as tension, but as serenity, not as push, but as radiant presence. The body is like a musical instrument, and your soul is the one who must learn how to tune it, how to touch the strings of prana with such care and stillness that the melody of God begins to play itself through you, not by effort, but by vibration, not by willpower, but by remembrance. So now, beloved, having heard the truth about energy, not as a commodity, but as consciousness, not as a fuel, but as spirit, it is time for us to enter the first sacred key, the breath, through which the current becomes perceivable, through which the waves of restlessness subside, and the divine river of still vitality begins to rise again toward its source. Come, let us breathe together now, not to survive, but to awaken. Beloved soul, sit now in stillness, for it is time to remember that your breath is not a mere biological rhythm, nor a mechanical survival reflex, but a living bridge between your mind and your soul, a sacred river that flows from the shores of the finite toward the infinite. And if you have ever wondered why you feel scattered, why you grow weary by midday, why your emotions rise and fall with every gust of circumstance like leaves in the wind, it is because the breath has been forgotten, made shallow by distraction, chained by restlessness, and robbed of its spiritual dignity. But I tell you truly, to master your energy, you must first befriend your breath, not as an unconscious habit, but as a prayer, a teacher, a vehicle of the divine. From the moment you entered this world, crying into the arms of Maya, your breath has sustained you without condition, without pause, without praise. Yet how rarely have you stopped to meet it, to watch it, to honor its sacred flow, to understand that each inhale is an invitation to receive God's vibration, and each exhale a chance to release the false, the tired, the untrue, the ego chatter that clutters the temple of your inner silence. It is not the lungs alone that breathe. It is your life force, your prana, that pulses beneath the physical breath. And when you slow the breath, when you lengthen its rhythm, when you still its surface, you begin to perceive not only greater calm, but a shift of consciousness, a gentle widening of inner space, a brightness behind the closed eyes that was always there, waiting for you to come home. Now close your eyes and breathe with men, not hurried, not shallow, but with reverence. Inhale slowly to a count of 6, drawing the breath through the nostrils with a soft, silent whisper, as if welcoming a sacred guest into your inner chamber. Hold gently for 6 counts, not with tension, but with sacred pause, as if the breath is bowing before the altar of your spine. Then exhale for 6 counts, releasing all turbulence, all expectation, all noise, until only presence remains. And finally, pause again for 6 counts, resting in the holy stillness between movements, where God's vibration sings most clearly. This is the square breath, not a trick for stress, but a portal for spiritual receptivity, a rhythm through which the soul reclaims its seat at the center of your awareness, a method through which your scattered forces begin to return, like birds flying back to their hidden nest after a long storm. And now, as you continue this breathing, silently chant the sacred sound Om on the exhale, not aloud but mentally, vibrating it through the spine, feeling it rise like a golden thread from the base of your being toward the point between the eyebrows, where the spiritual eye, your doorway to cosmic perception, awaits your attention, not with demand, but with patience, like a loving friend long neglected. Let each repetition of Aum be a drawing in of the infinite, a calling forth of your true power, not the power of doing, but the power of divine being. The breath becomes your chariot, your mantra, the reins, and the inner gaze your guiding star. And as you practice this, morning by morning, even for 5 sacred minutes, you will begin to feel a change, not only in your breath, but in your day, in your thoughts, in your very spine, which begins to hum again with the quiet song of the infinite. Say now within yourself, my breath is the prayer by which I rise. My breath is the current through which God flows. My breath is not minite, is the touch of spirit, whispering, I am. And as this realization dawns, let us now ascend to the spine itself, the altar of divine power, where the energy of God moves upward through hidden gates, where the breath becomes light, and the light becomes realization. Come, let me take you there. Now, beloved, let us journey from the breath into the sacred spino, the physical court of flesh and bone which you have studied in anatomy books, but the luminous highway of divine current that lies within, invisible to the ordinary eye, yet more real than anything the senses have ever touched. For it is along this inner axis that the life force flows, the soul travels, and God speaks. And if the breath is the chariot, then the spine is the golden road leading from the limitations of the body to the boundlessness of spirit. The latter Jacob saw in vision, the tree of life spoken of in holy scriptures, the pillar of fire around which the entire temple of your being is constructed. I tell you this plainly, not to astonish, but to awaken. Your spiritual spine is not metaphor, it is divine anatomy, an astral reality veiled by your material perception, and along this spine are placed the chakras, not as decorations of personality or symbols of moods, but as divine gates, vibratory centers through which the soul's energy ascends toward God. And when you sit in stillness and straighten the body, aligning it like a sacred tower, and when you lift your gaze to the point between the eyebrows, not straining, but surrendering, and when you breathe with reverence, you begin to feel a subtle stirring, a warmth, a current that rises not from muscle nor from effort, but from the remembering of your origin in spirit. The sages of India did not speak idly when they declared that the spine is the Sushumna, the central channel of divine awakening, and the chakras, those radiant lotuses placed at intervals from the base of the spine to the crown, air, not static symbols to be studied in books or colored in diagrams, but living vibratory petals that open only through stillness, devotion, and inward attunement, not through stimulation or emotional display. For the purpose of energy mastery is not to play with powers, but to become transparent to the one power, to rise from the gross to the subtle, from the subtle to the causal, and from the causal to the pure stillness of spirit beyond all form. And if you have read that the chakras govern emotions or correspond to personality types, let me now lift you above those surface ripples and reveal the deeper truth. The chakras are not ornaments of the ego, they are altars of the soul, and each one is a threshold, a challenge, a gate that must be passed not through knowledge, but through surrender, through discipline, through love for Godan. So the first chakra, Muladhara, is the root, not of survival instincts, but of the sleeping divine energy known as Kundalini, the coiled serpent of God power. And when awakened properly, not prematurely, not recklessly, but through daily inner purity and breath awareness, it begins to rise. Not in frenzy, but in peace, not in explosion, but in still ascent through the spinal temple. As the current rises through Svadhisthana, the sacral center, and on to Manipura, the navel, to Anahata in the heart, Vishuddha in the throat, and Ajna behind the spiritual eye, the energy is refined, purified, magnetized upward, until the soul begins to remember that it was never a body, never a personality, but always the radiant light of God descending into form, now yearning to ascend again, not to escape the world, but to realize that it was never apart from God to begin with. The chakras are not lights to decorate your aura, they are lamps to illuminate the upward path of return. And when the breath flows upward, and the gaze is lifted inward, and the mind is silent, then these doors begin to open, not all at once, not by force, but as flowers opening to the sun when the conditions are right. Visualize now, even as you sit quietly, a golden current, not hot, not cold, but alive with divine peace, moving gently upward from the base of your spine to the crown of your head, not imagined, but felt as a subtle presence, a holy ascent that carries no tension, no demand, only remembrance, and with each breath, Feel it rising. Inhale. I lift my soul. Exhale. I surrender to thee. This is not fantasy. It is the beginning of mastery, the reclaiming of the altar within your own being, where the fire of God has never gone out. Let us now take this knowledge, not as theory, but as instruction, and step into the next moment of sacred practice. Not once a year, not once a week, but each morning and night, as naturally as one drinks water or greets the dawn. For spiritual energy is not something you acquire, it is something you align with, something you live. Come now, let me guide you through a daily routine of devotion and vibration, where every hour becomes a song of inner light. Every day, beloved soul, life hands you a choice, not between good and bad alone, nor merely between success and failure, but between alignment and forgetfulness, between soul consciousness and ego delusion, between flowing with the divine current or resisting it by clinging to the smallness of personality and the heaviness of worldly thoughts. And therefore, if you would become master of spiritual energy, you must treat each morning not as a mechanical resumption of habits, but as a sacred resurrection, a reawakening of your divine identity. For the currents of the previous day, the impressions of restless dreams, and the residual dust of subconscious fears all await you upon waking, and they will pull you downward again unless you rise deliberately, consciously, with breath, with gaze, with invocation. So, as your eyes open to the new day, do not first reach for your phone, nor for the noise of the outer world, for even a single careless act in those first moments can scatter the delicate threads of soul awareness that have been restored in sleep. Instead, sit upright immediately, even in your bed if necessary. Straighten your spine, as if aligning yourself with the axis of the universe, and take 3 deep, slow breaths, not to oxygenate the lungs alone, but to gather your prana, your sacred life force, from the dispersal of dreams back into the throne of the spine. Each inhale drawing in divine remembrance, each exhale releasing yesterday's illusions. As you breathe, place your right hand over your heart or gently over your spiritual eye, and inwardly affirm, not with tension but with soul certainty, I call on the divine energy within me now. And feel, as you say this, not merely the echo of words, but the subtle movement of vibration, as if the soul itself is stirring, stretching its wings within the temple of the body, reminding you, I am here. Then close your eyes lightly, not in strain but in soft inward gaze, and lift them, gently, to the point between the eyebrows, the seat of the spiritual eye, the divine command center, the inner sun that awaits the devotee's attention like a faithful guide, and mentally chant, slowly and reverently, reveal thy energy in me, O Spirit, reveal thy energy in me, O Spirit, letting the mantra ride the breath, letting the breath ride the intention, letting the intention ride the silence, and in that stillness feel the truth that your energy is not your own, not generated by calories, caffeine, or ambition, but awakened by attunement, by harmony with the infinite current that flows through you. Yes, but does not originate from you. Just as the wave rises with the ocean's will, not its own. Then, beloved, as your morning unfolds into the activities of life, your work, your relationships, your errands and obligations, do not leave the sacred behind as if it were a mood to be visited only at sunrise. No, carry it with you in the breath, in the posture, in the intention of your spine, and at midday, when the world begins to press in, when thoughts become noisy and your energy begins to flicker, pause. Just pause, place your hand on your heart or gently on your belly, and take one deep breath, silently repeating, stillness is power, and remember that you are not here to react, but to radiate. Not here to strive, but to flow in God's rhythm. That single breath, offered in reverence, can realign the current of your day more than an hour of effort made in forgetfulness. And in the evening, before the day is surrendered into sleep, return once more to the spine, not merely to unwind, but to seal the vibrational gains of the day with sacred awareness. Sit in silence, close your eyes, and review the day in reverse, not to judge, but to observe where your energy flowed with God and where it leaked into ego, where you remembered and where you forgot. And as you do this, breathe slowly upward through the spine, as if reclaiming every lost moment, every scattered vibration, back into the center of your being. Say inwardly, all energy belongs to thee, O Spirit, Let nothing remain in restlessness. And feel, as you rest, not tiredness but wholeness, not fatigue, but peace that comes from inner alignment. Understand this well. Energy is not created by you, it is remembered through your alignment and forgotten through your distraction. When you begin and end each day with the spine aware, the breath reverent, and the soul surrendered, you become once again what you were always meant to be, not a beggar for power, but a bearer of divine current, a living channel for the infinite to express through your thoughts, your movements, your work, and even your rest. And so we now come to the obstacles, those ancient thieves of your sacred vitality, not to fear them, but to expose them, and in that exposure, disarm them forever. Let us continue. Now let me speak to you not only as a teacher, but as your eternal friend. For every sincere seeker who begins to awaken this sacred force within will sooner or later confront the same three cunning adversaries, not demons of mythology, nor curses from without, but internal saboteurs, subtle distortions of your own awareness that masquerade as strength, disguise themselves as logic, and pretend to be your ally while quietly draining you of divine vitality. And unless you learn to recognize and disarm them, you will continue to wonder why your energy rises in moments of inspiration, only to vanish in moments of distraction, why your peace collapses at the slightest challenge, and why your soul's momentum, so carefully cultivated in morning stillness, seems to scatter like leaves in the wind before the afternoon has fully begun. The first enemy, beloved, is ego will, the seductive but exhausting impulse to force life, to grip tightly with the mind and say, I must make this happen, as if you were a machine fueled by effort alone. But remember what I have said, will that is separated from spirit becomes tension, not power, and the ego's constant pushing, striving, defending, and reacting does not create energy, it burns through it like fire-consuming oil, until the lamp is dry and you wonder why the light has gone out. Divine will is calm, fluid, strong, but never frantic. It moves with certainty, not urgency, and when you act from alignment rather than assertion, the whole universe flows with you, for God's strength is never hurried, and the soul never begs for outcomes. It radiates inner knowing. The second enemy is mental overuse, the habit of living in your thoughts rather than in awareness, of chewing endlessly on problems, conversations, imaginary futures, and remembered wounds, all of which consume prana, the sacred life force, like leaking pipes draining a reservoir you do not see. And though the mind may pride itself on solving, planning, analyzing, it was never designed to be your master. It was meant to serve the soul, to follow intuition like a lantern follows a flame. And so when you live trapped in thoughts, even noble ones, your energy dissipates into 1,000 unreal directions, leaving your body tired and your spirit fragmented. But when you pause, breathe, feel, and return to now, you become whole again, not by solving anything, but by remembering what always was. That clarity comes not from mental noise, but from spiritual stillness. The third enemy, perhaps the most common, is emotional reactivity, the tendency to let emotions rule your responses rather than spiritual awareness. And every surge of anger, every wave of anxiety, every complaint or criticism, every grasping for approval or fear of rejection sends shock waves through your subtle system, not just temporarily agitating your peace, but imprinting jagged vibrations into your astral spine, distorting the upward current of energy and making you feel heavy, drained, and disconnected without knowing why. But emotions, though real in sensation, are not the soul's truth. They are weather, not climate, ripples on the surface of the lake, and when you identify with them, you fall. But when you witness them with calm breath and devotion, you rise not by suppressing or controlling, but by letting them pass like clouds across the sky of your awareness. Therefore, dear one, let this be your affirmation in the face of these three adversaries, not from fear, but from mastery. I do not force. I flow with divine will. I do not scatter. I return to center. I do not leak. I anchor in stillness. I rise in spirit, and spirit rises in me. Say these words not as affirmations of hope, but as declarations of being. For they are not merely true of what you wish to become, they are true of what you already are. If only you would remember. And now, let us seal this understanding, not with more thought, but with the feeling of what true spiritual energy actually is, not an idea, not a mood, but the very breath of God moving through you, the silent radiance of the soul when it remembers its source. Let us now feel what real energy is. Now, my beloved, come with me beyond theory, beyond effort, beyond the many techniques we have named, for all these are the gate, but you must walk through to the garden itself. And that garden is not a new power you must earn or a new identity you must create, but a return to what has always pulsed silently within you, what has always whispered in the stillness between breaths, what has always watched from behind your eyes and waited through the noise of your restlessness, through the weariness of your struggle, through the distractions of the senses and the delusions of ego pride. For real spiritual energy is not excitement, not stimulation, not force. It is quiet joy that needs no reason. It is living stillness that pulses with radiance. It is the current of God flowing through your spine like golden light, rising from the base of your being into the throne of your awareness, lighting every cell from within, not because you have demanded it, but because you have finally stopped blocking it. You ask, but how will I know when I have touched it? And I say, you will know not through a thunderclap, but through a silence so full it makes you weep. You will know when you feel joy without a cause, when peace settles in your chest like the breath of 1,000 prayers answered without words, when you walk and feel not your feet but the presence of light guiding them, when your body becomes so light you forget it, when time seems to slow, not because the world has changed, but because you have stepped out of its illusion and into the eternal now, where spirit always is, where the soul always shines, and where the kingdom of heaven reveals itself not in some distant sky, but in the beating of your heart, the rising of your breath, the quiet gaze of your uplifted eyes, and the golden current of divine energy that no longer asks, how do I become powerful? But whispers, I have never been anything but God's presence in motion. In such moments, and they will come, you will understand what I meant when I said, you feel as if you were joy itself, moving, for in that state, energy is no longer something you generate, it is something you become, and all your actions flow not from strain, but from spontaneous soul alignment. And your words carry healing not because they are clever, but because they are soaked in presence, and your breath becomes a prayer, not recited but lived, and your very gaze uplifts others not by intention, but by vibration. Because when you become a conduit for the divine energy that has always lived within you, you no longer need to speak of love, it shines through your eyes. You no longer need to preach about God, your stillness becomes the sermon. You no longer need to chase power, your very being becomes power made gentle, radiant, and free. Now sit with me, spine straight, body quiet, eyes softly lifted to the point between the eyebrows, and breathe not as a body, not as a mind, but as a soul remembering its source. And with each inhale, silently affirm, I receive, and as you hold the breath, silently affirm, I remember, and as you exhale, silently affirm, I radiate. And let this be not a technique but a sacred returning, a ritual of remembrance that you are not the flicker of the flame, but the fire, not the passing wind, but the eternal breath, not the vessel of energy, but the energy itself. For you were not made to be a seeker crawling toward God, you are the child of God waking up within Him. And the moment you align with that truth, your energy becomes inexhaustible, your presence becomes healing, and your life becomes not a struggle to survive, but a lamp through which divine light pours into the world. Right below, if you feel called, I awaken spiritual energy now, not because these words are magic, but because they are a vow, a return, a recognition, and if you make them with the breath of your soul, the spine of your awareness, and the stillness of your gaze, I promise you, you will begin to feel not tomorrow, not after mastery, but now that your breath is a temple, your spine a river of light, and your life a flame lit not by effort, but by remembrance. And that remembrance, dear one, is the first and final step into mastery. Let this be the beginning. Let this be the prayer. Let this be the power. Let this be the presence of God, alive in you forevermore. My beloved ones, so many of you gaze tenderly upon your children and imagine that you have given them only the gift of life, that they have come into this world as blank slates upon which you will write their destiny through love, education, and nurturing. But there is a deeper truth. seldom spoken yet woven into the laws of divine justice. Your child carries more than your name, more than your features, more than your mannerisms. The soul of your child is not an isolated spark. It has been magnetically drawn into your orbit by the unseen force of karma, the vibrational law that binds souls through shared actions, desires, and lessons stretching across lifetimes. When a child is born to you, it is not mere biology at work, nor coincidence. It is the invisible hand of God placing into your arms a being whose karmic thread is intertwined with yours, whose destiny cannot be fully separated from the patterns of energy you have created through thoughts, deeds, and spiritual efforts, both past and present. You may wonder why certain traits, even certain struggles, seem to arise in your child without explanation, why old wounds in your own life seem to echo in the life of the young one you cradle. The materialistic world will tell you it is genetics or environment alone, but I reveal to you a sacred science far deeper. The vibrational field of your karma surrounds you like a magnetic aura, and into that field are drawn souls whose own karmic lessons resonate with yours. It is not a punishment but a divine design, a chance for both parent and child to work out unresolved debts and to help one another climb the spiritual ladder toward freedom. Know this and feel the weight of responsibility, yes, but also the light of divine opportunity. For this bond, though karmic in nature, is also the golden thread through which God's redeeming love may flow, lifting not only you, but generations yet to come. Child and parent meet not first in the physical realm, but in the subtle corridors of spirit long before conception, long before the first heartbeat is heard. Souls preparing for another earthly sojourn are drawn into fields of vibration perfectly suited to their next set of lessons. Just as a seed is carried by the wind to the soil most suited for its growth, so too the soul is guided by the winds of karma and divine intelligence into the womb of a particular mother, into the care of a particular father, to experience exactly what is needed for its evolution. You must not think that souls are helpless or forced into families without purpose. No, in the great celestial schools between incarnations, guided by angels and divine masters, each soul glimpses its next birth and understands the lessons awaiting. Often, there are promises made across lifetimes. A mother who cared for a soul in a past life may receive that soul as her child in the next. A father who neglected spiritual duty toward another may be given a second chance to guide that same soul now reborn. This is why you must see your child not as a possession or as a clay figure for you to mold in the image of your ambitions. Rather, you must see them as a sacred traveler, a divine pilgrim who has chosen to walk a part of their path beside you, even through you, in order that both of your souls may advance together. There is no randomness in this divine choreography. God Himself arranges these spiritual meetings, ensuring that no lesson is missed, no act of love is forgotten, no wrong goes without opportunity for redemption. When you look into the eyes of your child, you are looking into the face of eternity, meeting again a companion from journeys unseen, now given to you so that through love, forgiveness, and spiritual striving, the karmic threads may be untangled and rewoven in light. Modern thinking tells you that a child inherits only your physical genes, and that the patterns of life successes, illnesses, tendencies of character are dictated solely by biology and by the environment you create in your home. This is only a fraction of the truth. The deeper inheritance, the silent transmission that passes unseen from you to your child, is the vibrational imprint of your own karma. Thoughts are living energies. Emotions are waves of subtle power. Every action you take, every pattern of desire or fear you cultivate, sends out invisible ripples into the astral realms. The soul of your child, long before entering your womb or taking its first breath, feels those ripples and is drawn or repelled by them, according to the spiritual contract both of you have entered. Even during pregnancy, your moods, your prayers or lack of prayer, your serenity or anxiety imprint upon the unborn child's subtle body. This influence is not deterministic. Each soul carries its own karma, but like a musician playing alongside another, your notes intermingle, harmonizing or clashing according to divine law. Thus, what you call family traits are often karmic resonances, not just physical heredity. Understand this, and you will awaken from Maya's illusion that you are merely raising a biological child. Instead, you are holding a mirror to your own unresolved energies and being given a holy chance to transform them into light. If you choose not to change, those karmic vibrations may echo in your child's experiences. But if you purify your thoughts, if you uplift your consciousness towards spirit, that too will silently uplift your child, sometimes without a word being spoken. Beloved soul, let us now enter more deeply into the subtle mystery of how karma truly flows from parent to child, not as a visible chain forged by iron links, but as a delicate web of vibration, unseen yet more binding than anything the physical senses can perceive. Karma is not a record kept in books of heaven, nor is it a mechanical tally of deeds awaiting judgment. It is a living resonance, a magnetic field born of every thought you think, every emotion you allow to grow unchecked, every action that moves outward into creation. This vibration settles into your astral body, the luminous sheath that surrounds and permeates your physical form, and from there it radiates into the unseen currents that bind all souls in this cosmic drama. When a child is drawn into your life, it is not simply because biology aligned or circumstances made room for theme. It is because the subtle resonance of your karma and theirs began to sing the same note, attracting one another like two flames drawn together by a single breeze. This vibrational exchange does not begin at conception alone. It has roots in past incarnations where promises were made, bonds of love or strife were formed, and debts of kindness or pain were left unresolved. These bonds do not dissolve with the death of the body. They ripple forward, calling souls back into relationship, sometimes reversing roles. What was once a father may return as a son. What was once a rival may return as a daughter. What was once a dependent may now come to guide you. And so, even before birth, the child's astral essence is already mingling with yours, drawn not only to the womb but to the spiritual atmosphere you carry. Every unresolved sorrow you have not offered up to God, every resentment still clutched, every unfulfilled longing or unexamined fear creates subtle vibrations that the incoming soul feels as familiar. Whether harmonious or heavy, these vibrations are part of the curriculum they have chosen, the schoolhouse of divine lessons they must attend beside you. Yet understand this well. This karmic bond is not only a chain of limitation, it can also become a bridge of liberation. Just as negative vibrations may entangle, elevated vibrations may free. When you meditate, pray, practice forgiveness, and surrender your ego to divine will, your astral body changes. It brightens, softens, magnetizes itself with higher frequencies of love and wisdom. These refined vibrations also radiate into your child's field, shaping not only their subconscious tendencies, but their very opportunities for spiritual awakening. Think of it like two tuning forks. If one is struck and vibrates at a high, pure pitch, the other begins to resonate at the same note without ever being touched. So it is with karma between parent and child. Your inner transformation silently awakens their inner potential, freeing both souls from old patterns and opening the door to new possibilities that neither might have reached alone. Karma may have drawn your child to you for unfinished lessons, but divine grace allows that those lessons need not repeat the pain of the past. Instead, through vibrational upliftment, you can teach not only with words but with your very presence that freedom is possible, that the chains of old mistakes can be melted in the fire of love, that even lifetimes of entanglement can be unwoven through spiritual effort. This is the sacred responsibility and the sacred gift, that every time you lift your thoughts to God, you lift not only yourself but also the soul of your child who has entered your karmic sphere. And every time you resist this upward pull, every time you give in to anger, despair, or ego-driven striving, you do not only bear that burden alone, you send ripples into the soul of your child. Thus, the highest act of love a parent can offer is not merely protection or worldly success, but self-purification, the steady, conscious elevation of one's vibration, until it sings only the music of spirit. Now, dear soul, having seen how vibration draws souls together long before birth, let us enter a deeper, even more intimate mystery, sacred bridge between the astral and the physical realms. and how this bridge becomes the channel through which karma imprints itself upon the life of your child. The material world is but the gross shadow of subtler worlds, and behind every physical form, there is an astral counterpart shaping, guiding, and sustaining it. The body of a child does not merely form from cells and genetic instructions. It takes shape according to patterns woven in the astral body, which itself is shaped by past experiences, unresolved energies, and the magnetic field of karmic tendencies carried from life to life. When a soul approaches birth, guided by divine law and its own evolutionary needs, it is enveloped by the luminous field of the parent's astral energies. The mother's emotional atmosphere, her inner peace or turmoil, her unspoken fears or soaring faith, all these are not locked inside her mind but radiate outward like unseen waves, merging with the forming astral body of the child. The father, too, contributes not only through the physical spark of life but through the strength or frailty of his thoughts, his hidden resentments or unshakable devotion, which silently color the astral canvas upon which the incoming soul begins to paint its new story. Though unseen, these energies are real and potent. They become the subtle clay from which destiny is molded long before a first cry breaks the air. Science may trace physical heredity through DNA, but divine wisdom knows that heredity is also vibrational. Just as a musician may inherit not only the hands of a pianist, but the very passion for music from generations past, so too does the soul inherit fields of influence, born not only of physical matter, but of astral imprints passed down through thought and feeling. This is why families often share unseen burdens or blessings. What appears as mere coincidence is truly the resonance of astral threads linking their lives. A parent's recurring sorrow can echo in a child's unexplained melancholy. A parent's faith and devotion can awaken a natural inclination toward divine love in their offspring. This is not mechanical transfer, but the sacred dance of energy between souls bound by karmic ties and divine intention. Yogananda often taught that even before birth, a mother should meditate and pray, inviting divine light to flow through her as a river of peace into the forming life within. Such holy practices refine her own astral field, and like sunlight through stained glass, color the child's subtle body with vibrations of serenity, strength, and spiritual receptivity. A home where God's name is sung, where thoughts are steeped in forgiveness and gratitude, creates not only a wholesome environment for the physical child but a luminous temple for the astral soul taking root there. And know this well, when parents unite their will with spirit, praying together, serving together, seeking God sincerely, the karmic bonds that might have otherwise weighed down the lineage are gradually dissolved. The child still walks their own soul path, but the path is cleared of many hidden thorns, replaced with stepping stones of divine blessing that allow both parent and child to ascend toward freedom. So understand, beloved, your physical care for your child, feeding, protecting, nurturing, is holy indeed, but even more sacred is the unseen shaping of their astral being through your own vibrations. Every moment of self-purification, every act of silent prayer, every breath surrendered to divine light becomes a spiritual inheritance more enduring than wealth or titles. And when you realize this, parenting becomes not a worldly task but a form of spiritual ministry where every thought is an offering on the altar of the soul entrusted to your keeping, and every rise in your consciousness lifts not only you, but also the little one God has placed in your care. Beloved, now that you have understood how the unseen currents of karma draw souls together and how the astral field of the parent silently weaves its threads into the child's destiny, we must speak of something even more profound, something that brings both comfort and solemn responsibility. Though your vibrations shape the environment, your child has not come as a helpless victim of inherited karma, nor as an accidental recipient of burdens they did not choose. No, in the vast orchestration of divine justice, every soul enters this life with the clear though hidden memory of lessons yet to be learned, bonds yet to be mended, love yet to be given. And it is for this reason that your child has chosen you not only to receive your guidance, but to hold a mirror to your own soul's unfinished journey, offering you, too, a chance for growth and liberation. From the celestial halls of light where souls prepare for reincarnation, your child beheld you, not your flaws, not your human errors, but your deeper essence, the qualities of heart and spirit that could best help them resolve their karmic knots and fulfill their divine purpose. The threads of past incarnations bound you together long before this earthly meeting, and perhaps you walked together in lifetimes where roles were reversed. What was once parent may now be child. What was once a rival may now return as a companion in your household. Each relationship is not happenstance but a divine appointment, a spiritual contract woven by God's wisdom to provide every soul the exact experiences it needs for upward evolution. This is why, when challenges arise between parent and child, conflicts of will, echoes of pain, inexplicable tensions, you must not see them merely as personality clashes or parental failings. They are karmic lessons playing out through the drama of this life, opportunities for both souls to forgive where once they clung to hurt, to love where once they withdrew, to guide where once they misled. When a child suffers or faces trials you wish you could shield them from, remember this truth. Their soul has chosen these tests, not for cruelty's sake, but to awaken latent strength, to refine understanding, to burn away old limitations in the purifying fire of experience. Even the hardships they encounter under your roof are part of the curriculum they willingly embraced before birth. And so, while you cannot erase the lessons they have come to learn, you can transform the quality of those lessons by living in divine consciousness yourself. If anger was the karmic tie between you, offer them the vibration of patience. If abandonment shadowed your past lives together, fill this incarnation with unwavering presence and love. If misunderstanding once drove you apart, open channels of listening and spiritual friendship. In this way, the karma that brought you together becomes not a chain of sorrow but a bridge of grace, allowing both of you to transcend old patterns and step closer to the eternal freedom for which your souls hunger. You see now that the role of parent is not one of ownership or control. It is an honor bestowed by God Himself, a sacred invitation to serve as guide and companion to a traveling soul who trusts you enough to share this intimate journey. When you look into your child's eyes, do not see merely youth or innocence. See the ancient, wise traveler walking beside you once more, both of you pilgrims on the same timeless path back to the infinite. My beloved, now that you know your child's soul has chosen you deliberately, not by chance or accident, it is time to lay aside the old illusion that you own your child, or that they are merely an extension of your body, your ambitions, or your unfulfilled dreams. A parent is not a sculptor shaping lifeless clay, bending it to his vision of perfection. A parent is a sacred guide entrusted with a radiant, eternal soul loan that has walked through many worlds, worn many bodies, tasted joy and sorrow through countless ages, and has now come to you to walk a little further on its long pilgrimage back to God. You must understand that your task is not to create them in your image, nor to bind them with the heavy chains of worldly expectation, but to shepherd their spirit gently, to nurture the divine spark within them, to remind them of their forgotten divinity. Many parents believe that they must protect their children from all suffering, from every challenge and hardship, thinking this is love. But true love does not suffocate the soul's journey. True love lifts, strengthens, and inspires it to rise higher. Even as you guide their steps, you must not hold their wings, for a child is not born to live your unfinished dreams, but to unfold the dreams God has whispered in their own immortal heart. Yogananda taught that spiritual friendship is the highest form of relationship, even between parent and child. What does this mean? It means walking beside them as a companion of the soul, not standing above them as a ruler. It means teaching them not only with rules and words, but with the silent magnetism of your own devotion to truth. When you meditate, when you surrender anger to peace, when you exchange fear for faith, you are not only uplifting yourself, you are silently guiding your child more powerfully than 1,000 spoken lectures could ever do. Spiritual guidance flows not by command but by example. And when your child sees you living as a radiant, balanced, God-attuned being, something stirs in their own consciousness, remembering, a longing to live in that same light. Release the thought, then, that you can control their destiny. You cannot live their karma for them, nor should you try. You can only bless it, guide it, and purify the atmosphere in which they walk their unique path. The gardener cannot command the rose to become a lily, nor the lily to bloom as the oak tree does. Yet the gardener can clear the weeds, provide water and sunlight, nourish the soil with loving hands. So too is your sacred role, to clear the karmic weeds of negativity from your lineage, to shower divine light upon your home, to water your child's soul with prayer and the living example of spiritual living, until they feel free to grow upward toward the same Son of God that calls you both homeward. Every day, remind yourself in silent prayer, "Beloved Divine Mother, I do not own this child. I do not shape their soul. They are thine. Guide me that I may guide them. Speak through me that I may speak to them. Let every touch be thy blessing, every word thy wisdom, every gaze thy love." When you offer your parenting to God in this way, when you become not a master but a servant of spirit, you will discover that the bond between you and your child deepens beyond human attachment. It becomes a spiritual alliance, a holy companionship that uplifts both of your souls and frees you from the heavy burden of control and fear. Beloved soul, having understood that you are a guide and not an owner of your child's destiny, it is now time to uncover the secret key to transforming not only your own karma, but also the unseen currents flowing silently through your lineage: self-purification. So many parents labor tirelessly to give their children the best of the material world: education, opportunities, comforts, but neglect the greater gift, the invisible inheritance of spiritual vibration that no earthly wealth can match. The subtle field of energy you carry, shaped by every thought you think, every emotion you nurture, every hidden grief or resentment you hold, is the atmosphere your child breathes even more deeply than the physical air. And so, the highest service you can offer to your children and to generations yet unborn is to cleanse and uplift this inner vibration until it radiates only peace, only clarity, only God's light. Do not fear this cleansing, for it is not harsh penance or endless self-condemnation. True purification is a joyful return to your own divine essence. Begin each day not with hurried demands of the world, but with stillness, with breath aligned to spirit, with your gaze gently lifted to the spiritual eye as you silently offer yourself to the infinite. In meditation, visualize the heavy stones of past mistakes, old patterns of anger, fear, or attachment being lifted one by one from your astral spine by the hands of Divine Mother, until you feel lighter, freer, radiant with a peace no world can shake. As you practice, silently affirm, "Beloved Spirit, through thy grace alone my karma is dissolved. Through thy light alone my soul is cleansed. Through thy love alone my lineage is set free." In daily life, watch your reactions with calm detachment. When anger begins to rise, pause, breathe, offer it silently into the fire of God's peace. When fear whispers of scarcity or failure, lift your heart into divine trust. When old habits threaten to repeat themselves, remember that you are not a prisoner of the past. You are a soul awakening in the eternal present. Each such act of conscious transformation does not end with you alone. Its vibrations ripple outward into your home, touching your child's aura, cleansing karmic patterns that may have bound your family for centuries. A single moment of genuine forgiveness, a single prayer offered in deep humility, a single act of courage to respond with love instead of resentment can shatter ancestral chains and open unseen doors of grace for those who walk beside you, and even those who came before. Live also by noble ideals. Let honesty, kindness, and simplicity shape the tone of your household, for these high vibrations magnetically lift every soul who enters. Speak often of God's love, not as doctrine, but as living presence, and let your children see in your eyes the serenity of a soul rooted in spirit. Practice selfless service, sharing not only with your family but with all who cross your path. For each act of generosity gathers divine blessings that silently wash away old karmic debts. Remember that no prayer is ever wasted, no meditation unheard, no tear of sincere longing unseen by the eternal. Thus, by purifying yourself, you become a lighthouse for your children, a radiant being through whom divine magnetism flows freely, guiding them safely through karmic storms toward the calm shores of spiritual freedom. This is how karma is transcended, not by running from it or fearing its weight, but by transforming its vibration through God's grace, until nothing remains to bind your soul or theirs. Beloved soul, as you rise in consciousness and begin purifying your own karmic field, you will find that your very presence becomes a sanctuary for your child, a silent fortress of light surrounding them more powerfully than any physical wall could. This is the divine mystery of spiritual magnetism. It cannot be seen with the human eye, yet it shapes destiny more deeply than any spoken word or material action. When you live in attunement with spirit, your aura becomes a shield of divine vibration through which negative karmic influences cannot easily pass. Even unseen dangers, astral disharmonies, and karmic storms may be softened or redirected by the luminous energy emanating from a parent anchored in God's love and protection. You must understand that protection does not mean preventing every trial or hardship your child might face. Souls incarnate with lessons they have chosen, experiences they must encounter to awaken hidden strengths. True protection is spiritual. It is holding them in the light of divine remembrance, so that, whatever lessons life brings, they never lose connection with the truth of their own soul. This protection begins in the silent hours of prayer and meditation. When your child sleeps, place your hand gently on their head or hold them softly in your heart and inwardly whisper to Divine Mother, "Bless this soul, purify this karma, guide this little one always toward thy light." Know that every such prayer creates ripples in the astral worlds, strengthening the unseen guardians who watch over your child and weaving threads of grace that will guide them even when you are not near. Throughout the day, too, you can silently project blessings without uttering a word. When you see your child struggling, pause before you react outwardly. Close your eyes inwardly, lift your gaze to the spiritual eye, and silently offer a thought of strength, of courage, of divine wisdom for them. Your vibrations, refined through spiritual practice, will reach them like a gentle breeze, calming a stormy sea. The karmic lessons they must face will not vanish, but your silent blessing can lighten their weight, turning obstacles into stepping stones of wisdom, turning suffering into deeper compassion. This is not theory. It is a living law of consciousness. Introduce your child, in natural and joyful ways, to spiritual practices. Let them see you meditate, pray, and speak often of God as a living friend. Share with them simple chants or affirmations, not as rigid rituals but as playful invitations to touch divine joy. Even the smallest seed of spiritual habit planted in youth can blossom later into powerful protection when life's karmic winds blow strong. And remember always that divine love flows more powerfully than any karmic pattern. When you hold your child not with attachment or control, but with the infinite love of spirit shining through you, you create a bond of light stronger than lifetimes of bondage, a bond that will help guide both of your souls toward liberation. In this way, blessing your child is not a single act, but a way of being. Your purified thoughts, your silent prayers, your loving actions all create a spiritual inheritance far greater than worldly wealth. Through you, divine grace begins to rewrite not only your own karmic story, but the karmic destiny of your entire lineage, preparing the soul of your child to one day awaken fully into their own divine remembrance and freedom. Beloved, we have journeyed far into the hidden truth of karmic bonds, seeing how souls are drawn together, how vibrations imprint silently across generations, and how divine grace can purify and uplift not only you but your child and all who came before. Now we arrive at the sacred culmination of this message. Karma is not an eternal prison. It is a temporary dream, woven to teach, to awaken, to guide you toward the remembrance of your true nature as a child of God. And when one soul in a family truly awakens, when one heart surrenders wholly to Spirit, the light of that realization ripples outward beyond time and space, dissolving karmic patterns that may have bound entire lineages for centuries. This is not poetry but divine law. When you unite with God, you do not walk alone into freedom. You lift countless souls with you, including your child, your ancestors, and even those yet to be born. This is why your highest duty as a parent is not only to provide food, shelter, or worldly success, but to seek union with the eternal. In meditation, in prayer, in selfless service, strive every day to step out of ego consciousness and into the vast silence of spirit. Each breath that carries you upward through the astral spine is not only cleansing your own karma, it is opening channels of grace through which divine light can flow into your home, into your children, into the very fabric of your lineage. When you pray not just for yourself, but for your ancestors and descendants, when you bless them with each exhalation, envisioning divine light healing every wound of the past, you become a bridge of mercy between earth and heaven. Now, sit with me in stillness for a moment. Close your eyes, straighten your spine, and take a long, slow breath. As you inhale, silently affirm, I receive thy light. Hold the breath gently, feeling divine grace, filling every cell, every memory of pain or regret in your being. As you exhale, silently affirm, I bless my child, my family, my lineage with this light. Imagine waves of golden radiance flowing upward through you and outward into generations past and future, dissolving shadows, healing wounds, freeing every soul connected to yours from unseen chains. Repeat this until you feel peace blooming in your heart like a quiet sunrise. And now let this affirmation settle deep into your soul. I am not bound by past actions. Through God's light, my lineage is set free. I bless my child with eternal spirit. I live no longer in ignorance, but in divine remembrance. From this day forward, walk with the calm, knowing that your every upward step toward God is a step taken also for your child. When you rise above old tendencies, you silently teach them how to rise. When you live in light, you give them the courage to shine. When you remember your eternal self, you awaken the same truth within them. This is the unspoken promise of the Masters. One soul illumined becomes a torchbearer for many, and a parent illumined can liberate countless lives beyond their own.